Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto neglected by family Pheonix summoner. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by WouldItMatter and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. How can you and Mott train me now? A 6-year-old Naruto questions, looking up at the Yondaime Hokage, Minato Namikaze, also known as his father. Naruto, you know that you will wait until the academy like everyone else. Minato answered, his gaze never leaving the papers he was sentenced to sign and conquer when he became the Yondaime Hokage. But Tsunade and Karuni are training. Why can't I train too? Naruto demanded of his father, who finally drew his gaze from the paperwork and glared at Naruto like he had done this entire week. Tsunade and Karuni are special, Naruto. Your siblings are Jinchuriki, and as such they need to train to be able to harness that power in the future. You, however, are a normal child. Now go home, I have work to do. Go pester your mother. Minato ordered, dismissing his child before looking down and sighing as he continued to sign papers left and right. Naruto just looked down and walked out of the room. This was how he was sentenced to live through life, in the shadow of his Jinchuriki siblings. The Sandaime Hokage had done the sealing instead of his own father, if he could call him that, and sealed the yin half of the great Kyuubi into his sister Karuni and the yang half into his other sister, Tsunade. The village honored them as heroes, giving them special treatment while just ignoring Naruto. His siblings always got the friends and all but ordered them to leave poor Naruto alone. After walking out of the Hokage tower, Naruto slowly walked towards the Namikaze compound. He took the time, like always, to look at his clothing. It was just a simple white shirt with a black Namikaze clan symbol on his back, black shorts, and blue sandals. Now, if you were to look at his siblings, you'd see that they had elegant clothes that made the normal civilians envious and jealous of his two sisters. And then there were his parents. Minato and Kushina. Now, he didn't know how his mother survived the extraction of the almighty Kyuubi, insert snort, but he quite frankly does not care at all. They both ignore him. His sisters taunt him. Kids his age stay away from him or taunt him when they are with his sisters. Ugh, finally there is the Super Sennin, legendary Toad Sage, super pervert, Jiraiya. As if. Stupid old man could never live up to that name, and never will in Naruto since he came and spoke of the child of the prophecy. Naruto's sentence to absolutely no attention at all has become worse. Normally he'd just get one-word answers or snorts, now he gets nothing. Absolutely nothing unless it's only him and another person in the room. Growling angrily, Naruto shoved open the door to the compound and walked up to his room. On his way, he passed his sister's room. For the life of him he never figured out why those two wanted to share a room. Karuni is a girl of moderate height for a 5-year-old. She boasts shoulder-length crimson hair with a face similar to Minato's, just more feminine. Tsunade has blonde hair with streaks of crimson in it that reaches her lower back, an angular face very similar to Kushina's. Both are wearing elegant black kimonos with streaks of red. They both immediately looked at him with a weird emotion in them before they smirked and closed the door on him. Shaking his head, Naruto continued to his room. Opening the bland door, Naruto is greeted with a pure white room. His floor is simple wood, while his walls are just plain white. No posters, no drawings, no nothing. His bed isn't far off, white sheets with a deep blue comforter. His room is empty beside his bed, a wood desk, and his closet door. A single window illuminating the room unless he were to turn a light on. Exhaling heavily, Naruto flopped onto his bed and stretched everything outwards. What am I going to do? My so-called parents won't teach me, I'm too young for the academy, the stupid perv is too focused on playing with little tadpoles. Maybe I can find something in the Namikaze vaults, Naruto pondered before gaining a look of determination and practically lunging out of his bed and dashing down the hall and out of the main house of the Namikaze compound and ran to his left. Towards the giant library that isn't even rivaled by any other library in the Land of Fire. His stupid father has his advantages. Entering the huge black building, Naruto marveled at the sheer amount of books in the entire area. It was huge. At least 2 stories of pure book. He scanned through all of the novels, finding half of the section books for civilians like romance novels and other sorts, whilst the other half was for shinobi. He found books of chakra theory, jutsu theory, clan history, village history, etc. He grabbed an abundance of them, chakra theory and jutsu theory, as well as clan history. Then he came upon actual techniques and practices. Jackpot. It had jutsus ranging from E to SS rank, earth to fire, kinjutsu to taijutsu, kinjutsu to kunai, etc. Then he found it. Namikaze and Uzumaki clan secrets. Of course, he needed his blood to open them. Now, he loved the fact that he was born to his parents, just not his parents themselves. Before he would open it, however, Naruto walked over to a large table in the library and dropped his books and scrolls there, opened a random book, and sliced open his thumb. Running over while catching the blood dripping from his hand, Naruto stopped and smeared his blood all over the 2 seals. The 2 glass cases opened and presented him with 2 scrolls. One from the Namikaze clan, one from the Uzumaki clan. Now, Naruto was not stupid. His parents would absolutely destroy him if they found these scrolls in his possession. Though if they found it in his sister's hands they wouldn't. Ugh. Thinking fast, Naruto began to copy everything in the scrolls onto 2 blank scrolls he managed to find and hurriedly written, though he had precision. He wasn't a future seal master for nothing. Haha. After he transferred the information and resealed the scrolls into the glass cases, Naruto finally marveled at the information in the scrolls. In the Namikaze one, Naruto found his father's signature jutsus, Hirishin and Rasengan. In the Uzumaki scroll, Naruto found secret Uzumaki seals that he couldn't even begin to comprehend what they did yet and how to create the chakra weapons. Each Uzumaki has different ones in this story. Not sure if it's true in the manga or anime. It was a true jackpot. And his parents didn't even know. Haha. Naruto spent hours just sitting inside the library reading the books he had found. He mainly focused on the chakra and chakra theory books because he had read that the strongest shinobi knew everything about their tools or weapons. Chakra involved. Plus, it'd make it easier to understand what he would need to do when he tried chakra control. Lifting his head from his book to stare outside through a window, Naruto found himself staring at the setting sun. Great, his parents and sisters didn't even notice he wasn't at dinner. Sighing, Naruto marked his page before closing it and putting it on top of the pile of books he designated to his unread books. Getting up and popping his knees in the process, Naruto rushed to his home to find an empty and locked house. Wonderful. Not only did they forget about him at dinner, but they locked him out as well. And with all of the seals Minato puts in his house, there is absolutely no way that Naruto will ever be able to get into this house until morning. Mind my language, but fuck. Were Naruto's words, unknowingly making something inside of him laugh its ass off. Naruto took to sleeping leaning on the wall beside the door and nearly jumped awake when it opened and the family stepped out. All of them looked at him in surprise, then shock, then regret. Casting lazy eyes up at his supposed family, Naruto felt hurt swell inside his chest. The family stared at each other, the tension rising until Naruto decided to break it. "You forgot me." After those words left Naruto's mouth, he got up and shoved past his family and rushed up to his room, gently closing his door and walking over to his desk. Sitting in front of the dark wooded station, Naruto pulled open a drawer connected to it on his right and dug underneath the abundance of random inside before gently pulling out a binder that held many pictures he had prided himself on drawing. And he may call them ugly, but others that were to be lucky enough to be shown would quite simply call it perfection. Opening the binder and laying it across the desk, Naruto began to slowly turn the pages as he stared at each drawing. Most were on an interesting legend he had read when he was only 3. The legend was on a bird known as the Pheonix, a bird that would never truly die as it would constantly be reborn in the ashes of its old self. Naruto loved this story as he related it to himself. He would be reborn from the dead ashes of his weak self that his parents ignored and be transformed into a man so powerful that his parents could not ignore no matter how hard they would try. Some drawings were colored, some were shaded, some were simply pencil drawings. He did not know he had such a natural talent in art, but he decided not to bring it to light for his parents. They'd probably force him to be an artist rather than allowing him to be a shinobi if he did. Grabbing his pencil after sharpening it, Naruto went to a half-finished drawing and began to finish it. The drawing was of a flaming adult phoenix that was stretching its wings and gazing down upon Konoha from the Hokage mountain. Licks of flame were all around it as the birds spoke off in the legend were birds made of fire. Right now Naruto is working on the Hokage mountain while looking at it from his window, his desk placed in front of it so that if a drawing involved Konoha, he always had a perfect view. That was the one thing he loved about his home. Sadly, his moments of peace were shattered as a gentle and obviously unsure knock came from his door. "Neri-chan, come out and have breakfast." Naruto heard Kushina's muffled voice from his door. Naruto ignored it and just stared out of his window. If he continued drawing he'd get distracted because of his mother and screw up the drawing. He didn't want his parents thinking he was insane for snapping at them for nothing. And if he cleared that up by explaining that Kushina ruined his drawing, they'd want to see it. And then, yada yada yada, become an artist yada yada yada, your drawings are unbelievably amazing yada yada yada. A little more forceful knocks came from the door. "Neri-chan, you have to come out and have breakfast." Kushina pestered Naruto, making him grunt and close his eyes. Then Kushina did the unthinkable, she opened his door and stepped inside. Rage and panic rising quickly into Naruto's mind, he spun around at a decent speed and glared at his mother, teeth bared and eyes narrowed yet widened in anger. "Get out of my room." He yelled at Kushina angrily, shocking her as she stepped back. "You heard me. Get out." He bellowed at her angrily before snapping out of his chair, knocking it over with a loud bang, and stomped over before slamming the door in Kushina's face. Kushina just stared at the door, eyes wide, mouth open, and she didn't even move when the missing members of the family rushed up to see what all of the noise was. Naruto was huffing in anger inside his room, gritting his teeth as he stormed around his room. Getting to his bed, Naruto climbed on and went to punch the pillow before something that surprised and scared him happened. His hand became engulfed in a brilliant and vibrant orange and red fire before completely burning through his pillow and all the way through the bed. When he pulled his hand back, the fire was gone and his hand wasn't even scorched or blackened. And on top of that he felt no pain. Looking down at the hole where his fist went, he found a perfectly round hole that was black with little bits here and there of dying orange with smoke coming through the hole. Thankfully he stopped halfway through the bed. What the Naruto murmured before hearing his family walk back down the stairs. Thankfully. Trying to copy whatever he did to light his hand on fire, Naruto soon found his hand to be shrouded in a small little fire that lacked the vibrancy from before. When he went to punch his pillow, it barely went through but merely began to slowly burn it unlike before. Frowning as he pulled his hand back, Naruto focused on making it hotter before seeing it slowly gain color and vibrancy, though the size barely changed. Not satisfied, Naruto continued to push himself to find his limit. The fire continued to get brighter and more vibrant before it slowly began to turn blue. By this point Naruto was heavily sweating from the heat and he could easily see the air being distorted. Luckily, the fire alarms didn't go off as the fire wasn't technically burning anything, so smoke was not being made. Trying to push further, the blue got darker, yet it glowed more before Naruto really started to feel like he could barely breathe. Instantly, he stopped the fire and dropped to his hands and knees panting heavily. "My Kami, what was that?" was Naruto's only rational thought as he waited to catch his breath. After doing so, Naruto walked downstairs and grabbed a ration bar before walking out, completely ignoring his family as he knew they already ate. "I need a place to practice this. But where? I heard about a place called the Forest of Death. Figure with a name like that nobody would want to go there." With the famous training ground 42 set in mind, Naruto dashed towards the large gates. Minutes later Naruto found himself sitting down in a clearing where the sun actually managed to shine in the forest and brightened everything up. The trees, while huge, looked normal and the grass felt almost like silk. Taking a deep breath with his eyes closed, Naruto snapped them open and held a hand up that instantly became shrouded in a pale orange fire that barely burned even the grass. Focusing, Naruto soon found himself sweating again as he stared at a deep blue flame that licked the air and distorted it. Huffing, Naruto began to focus again as the flame darkened into a gray. By now Naruto was struggling to stand as he leaned against a tree. The gray fire darkened again before becoming an intense black that made his hand invisible to the world. Naruto could not believe it, his shirt was long gone and his shorts were beginning to burn away. Focusing once more, Naruto saw as the fire darkened before brightening and suddenly a bright light shrouded the clearing before fading showing a brilliant white fire that licked the air but did not distort it. Naruto was confused before becoming shocked when the fire instantly burned through the tree without resistance. Seems it was hot as hell when touched but it did not heat up anything else. Interesting. Suddenly, a soft landing was heard along with a somehow seductive yet serious voice. "Hey Gaki, what the hell is that in your hand?" Naruto's eye twitched violently as he turned. Everything he tried to keep secret always came out somehow. He was sure that his parents probably were looking through his drawings, he couldn't explain why he thought this, but he was 100% sure they were anyway. Now, the brilliant white flame in his hand was not going to get to his Fano. Minato didn't deserve to be called his father. The flame in his hand would get to his Hokage. Naruto was beyond mad. He was pissed. He growled dangerously as he turned to see a purple-haired woman wearing a very revealing outfit. She wore a tan trench coat, open to expose her fishnet shirt that you could almost see her breasts through, and she clearly wasn't wearing a bra. She had a dark orange skirt on, with shinobi battle boots on that had metal plates over the shins. He recognized her as the Snake Mistress and one of the Ice Queens of Konoha. Anko Mitarashi. Instantly, Naruto charged at her with his killing intent fully released. He created another ball of white flame in his other hand as he flew at her with surprising speed for his age. Yig. He yelled in pure rage as he tried to hit Anko with an overhead flaming fist, scorching her hair a little as she just barely dodged. Anko was very surprised. She had tailed the Hokage's son after seeing him dash out of the Namikaze compound. She was intrigued when she saw the strange flame in his hand, but what surprised her most was his speed currently. She was a fucking Junin and she barely avoided that fist. With what she had seen with the tree and the fire, she clearly would not survive even a single hit. She knew anything head-on would fail with the brat, so maybe she needed to trap him. Naruto flew at her again, white flame going everywhere as he tried to hit her. It infuriated him every time she dodged, or he would see the small smoke rising from any areas he managed to scrape her with the flames. He yelled in rage again when she used a chakra-enhanced jump to get away from him. Naruto was about to rush her again when pillars of rock caught his arms and held him close to the ground. Anko smirked when she saw that her earth imprisonment jutsu had worked, only to widen her eyes in shock when the Hokage's son simply lit his arms ablaze with the white flame, melting the rock that trapped him. Naruto smiled viscously when he saw Anko's look of fear. He didn't know why he was getting so wild in this fight, but he simply summed it up to being all of the pent-up rage inside him being released. His killing intent further increased as the flames on his hands flew up to his shoulders. As the rock melted, he began to slowly approach the now terrified Anko. However, when he noticed the actual fear in her eyes and the other flood of emotions, he backstepped in surprise. He thought that she had another plan. Naruto was actually having fun. Anko was shocked when the flame dissipated and Naruto backstepped with a look of realization in his eyes. "Hey, aren't you just playing with me?" Naruto questioned in a small voice. Anko tilted her head in confusion. Did this brat think that she was trying to play with him when he had that kind of fire? What the hell? She sighed and palmed her forehead with an exasperated smile on her face. "Bugaki," she murmured before brightening up and approaching him. "You gotta be careful with that fire, you little brat. If that fire had actually hit me, I'd die in one hit. Now, why don't you tell me where you learned to do that?" Anko questioned innocently, not noticing the look of utter and grim realization that passed Naruto's eyes. "My flame can kill people." Naruto thought to himself, shaking as he fell to his knees and looked at his hands. "If that fire had hit me, I would die in a single hit." Naruto thought again. He didn't remember the exact words Anko said, but it didn't matter. The meaning was still there. He then thought back to the pillow and the humongous tree. He raised his head and looked at the scorched hole through the extremely thick tree. His eyes trailed to the scorch marks all over Anko and some of the smoldering remains of the rock that Anko had trapped him with. His flames had burned through them without resistance. His hand didn't even feel any of the things he listed mentally because they had all burned before his hands could touch them. He looked up at Anko, tears in his eyes with a grim frown on his face. I'm sorry," he exclaimed quickly, surprising the Junin. He jumped away from her, all the while quickly repeating "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Anko didn't have time to say anything before Naruto was gone, dashing through the trees. Inside Naruto's mindscape. The big, graceful creature was staring through the eyes of Naruto. It sighed heavily. The boy had discovered the flame earlier than he thought. Which means that the boy would have to meet him sooner than he thought as well. The creature rose slowly, ruffling the dust and loose feathers off his giant body. And when I say giant, I mean giant. He was bigger and longer than the Kyuubi, even if it outstretched its tails. He was older than the beast too. Suddenly, the dark room was lit ablaze with a brilliant white light that was partnered with a kawaii aya. And from there, the little blonde boy's conscience was pulled into his mindscape. Enjoy. Naruto was huddling close to himself and shaking back and forth in his room. His eyes were focused on the hole in his pillow. His eyes were wide open and bloodshot. Naruto might pride himself privately over that fact that he thought he could handle killing anyone, but in truth he couldn't. He didn't know why the fact that he could kill so easily so hard. His strange flames could kill in a single punch. It scared him. Tears flowed in tiny rivers across the slopes of his puffy cheeks as dark thoughts passed his mind. He wouldn't want to be considered a murderer. His parents would hate him even more. Naruto grit his teeth in a grim frown as he rolled back and forth, practically crushing his legs under the force of his grip. Naruto's eyes suddenly shadowed and an insane smile came to his face. Don't worry about this becoming an insane or dark Naruto story. He will revert back to his normal self once he meets his tenant. He couldn't become a murderer if he was dead. His body shook as he reached his hand under his mattress to grab the hidden kunai he had there in case an intruder ever tried to assassinate him. His dad was the fourth Hokage. Naruto prepared to rip open his jugular vein before his vision went dark and his conscience receded into a seal that no one knew he had. Mindscape. Naruto found himself falling in an endless darkness, his arms and legs flailing above him while his hair was all blown forward. He felt the wind blowing all around him in spaced out powerful gusts. Can you figure out why the gusts are spaced out? He could see nothing. He couldn't even see his arms or legs. It was literally darkness. He tilted his head slowly to look at the ground, finding a ring of deep red flames and a large wooden pole in the middle, a branch on the side as if it were a tree. Naruto closed his eyes and accepted his fate. However, it didn't come. Naruto opened his eyes before closing them quickly as a brilliant white light engulfed wherever he was. He couldn't feel the wind anymore, all he could feel was soft but stern big things underneath him. He turned over onto his stomach before getting up onto his hands and knees. Beneath him was a brilliant white flame engulfed feather. But, the feather was easily the size of a house. Do you think I'm making his tenant too big? I mean he is an ancient and extremely powerful being that is older than the Kyuubi. He stroked it slowly, entranced by its beauty. For a second he was stupid enough to think that he was floating on the feather, slowly and gracefully flowing down to the ground until a giant blow of wind hit him in the face, nearly knocking him over had he not gripped the beautiful feather like a life raft. He raised his head and saw what seemed like an endless expanse of white in front of him before seeing it branch off into 3 giant tail feathers. Turning around, he saw another expanse of white with 3 giant branches. Then Naruto realized something. There were 2 wings, tail feathers, and the thing he was on was engulfed in flame. There was no way that he was on what he thought he was on. The giant thing he was on gave one giant heave before spinning quickly and tunneling in a spiral towards the ground, more specifically the giant wooden structure. Naruto screamed bloody murder as he and the giant thing were covered in a flaming spiral that flew behind them. The spiraling was increasing in speed, and Naruto nearly puked when all he saw was a blurry white all around him. Naruto was about to pass out when suddenly the spiraling stopped and the 2 huge wings spread out with a mighty and grueling kaiway. The giant thing gripped onto the branch continuing off the wooden structure, causing Naruto to lose his grip and fly off of the thing, tumbling to the ground and landing just outside of the fiery ring. He groaned loudly before slowly raising his head to look at whatever had launched him off of it. The beast was of enormous proportions, easily bigger than the Hokage mountain. Brilliant white flames encased its body. Near its legs were viscous-looking claws that were off of 3-4 curled finger-like toes. Giant wings were curled and hugged to its body, fluttering because of the flight it just made as the beast settled down. When Naruto's eyes landed on its head his mouth dropped. The beak sprouted out and curved downwards, a gunmetal gray color. Around it was a rounded head with large, noble eyes staring down at Naruto, glaring into his soul. They were a fiery luminescent blue, brighter than Naruto's own eyes. The beast took a deep breath, its long neck curling so it could still look at Naruto before leaning forward and opening its mouth and yelling a shrill kawaii at Naruto, making his hair blow all over the place and for Naruto's body to nearly go flying had the beast not willed the fire to bend around him and keep him in place. The beast returned to its previous position before almost smiling to Naruto, its eyes softening and giving him a caring look over. "Young one, do you know who I am?" It spoke, its voice booming and graceful, a sincere care in its voice. Naruto shook his head slowly, jaw on the floor, and his eyes widened and unclosing. The beast chuckled before speaking again. "I am a Kodai no Bai. I believe that this is the correct Japanese translation for ancient beauty. I am a beast older than the 9-tailed fox. I am the Hotaburi Ansu. White brilliance, master of the flight fire. I am Kadachi." The beast roared. "And, young one, I am one of the last phoenixes alive today." The creature, which Naruto now knew as Kadachi the Phoenix, finished with a smirk at Naruto's shocked face as it lost all color. "Whsai, done huh?" Naruto questioned, his head tilting to the side with a stupid look on his face. Kadachi shook his hand, raising his wing to fold it over his head in an exasperated manner. "Is this a dream?" Naruto finally yelled at Kadachi, who began to laugh wildly. "No, young one. Haha. We are in your mindscape. The place that could be considered your subconscious, though it's really just an empty abyss that is currently being filled by me anyway. As I said, I am Kadachi, one of the few phoenixes that are still alive. And you, young one," Kadachi leaned forward so that his beak was a few feet away from Naruto, "are my chosen." He spoke cryptically, confusing Naruto. "Chosen?" Naruto questioned the giant beast. He was still very confused about how this amazing phoenix was in his subconscious, but he didn't care. He was speaking to a real phoenix. He was so excited he was shaking a little, though he tried to stop as best he could. Kadachi chuckled at the child's shaking before narrowing his eyes and focusing on Naruto. "Yes, my chosen. I have chosen you to carry on my legacy, to become a phoenix. All in due time, however. For now, you will be trained in our ways and will become one of the world's strongest, what was it you humans call it? Ninja. Yay, I believe that is the word. You will become one of the strongest ninja in the world. Be wary, however, some of the very few phoenixes still alive today beside me do not like humans. Once they discover I am sealed inside you, they will stop at nothing to kill you." Naruto widened his eyes in fear before setting his jaw and narrowing his eyes in determination. "Then I will make them like humans." He yelled up at Kadachi with fire burning in his eyes. Kadachi let a small smile grace his beak before smiling evilly. "And to do that, you will have to go through my training," he told Naruto, who smiled determinedly and jumped up at the opportunity. He would become the man he wanted to be, one that no one could ignore. The man stronger than the Jinchuriki. The man defiant to the world's evil. The man, a beacon of light that the darkness of the world would fall to. He would become Naruto Kodachian. He will change his name after a certain event. The great warrior worthy of his tenant's title. Naruto Kodachi. The Hotaburi Ansu. Remember Kodachi's title, the White Brilliance. Pheonix. I-105. Naruto groaned as he stretched. Today is his first day of the academy, the Konohagakure ninja training. It was more like a giant test to see if you could actually handle being a ninja, which is why you are only taught the basics. Naruto had turned 10 one week ago on the Kyuubi festival, the same as his sisters. The triplets were now being sent off to the academy along with the other clan heirs. Naruto wasn't particularly happy, he had been training with Kodachi since he was 6 and at this point, he was at least a chunin. He could be higher, but Kodachi made sure he understood everything down to the smallest detail and feeling. He said this would help Naruto control the flames. Naruto didn't care. Every second he spent with Kodachi was the best in his day. Sighing heavily, Naruto got up and casually put on his outfit. He wore black shinobi sandals, black baggy pants, a tight black shirt with simple black fingerless gloves. He wore full sets of black because of the stealth needed to be a ninja. Though, when he mastered the powers given to him by his favorite person ever, Kodachi, he won't need stealth unless he's fighting another Pheonix. Hell, according to Kodachi, even a juvenile Pheonix could hold its own against a Biju anywhere from 1 tail through 4 tails. Though, Kodachi said that if they encountered the 1 tails, he'd go berserk on the Biju and its Jinchuriki. You see, Kodachi's maid had just birthed their little Pheonix in their nest and Shukaku came out of nowhere raging because insanity. It's as simple as that, no super long rivalry, no nothing. Shukaku just killed Kodachi's maid and his little Pheonix. Of course however, Kodachi fucked him up. Big time. Half of the desert was glass until Shukaku willed it to turn back to sand. Kodachi would make sure he finished the job the next time he saw Shukaku. Naruto finally decided that he got off track and left his house through his window. Lately, Naruto took every opportunity he could to avoid his family. Naruto knew that Anko Mitarashi had told Minato, simply due to the fact that he had Anbu following him everywhere he went about 2 days after the Anko incident. Naruto didn't care. He knew that the Anbu would never find anything related to the fire. Plus, Naruto trained with the fire in his mindscape anyway. Hokage's office. Minato sighed as he read through yet another report on his son. He could be using this time to be with his beloved daughters, but instead he had to read about his boring son. Minato cared about Naruto, but was overall uninterested in Naruto. At this point, after 4 years of finding nothing about the strange white fire Anko told him that Naruto possessed, he felt like Anko was lying to him. Sure, they found evidence that there was strong fire in the forest, but that could be a strange mutation of the animals in the forest anyway. Though, he couldn't believe that the pariah girl would lie to him. He and Kushina did remove her curse seal and made her at least likable around the village. But it all didn't make sense to him. If his son possessed such a powerful asset and power, why wouldn't he talk to Minato and Kushina to see if he could get training to use said power? Wouldn't the boy look up to Minato and wish to be like him? Moreover, wouldn't he like to be powerful like his sisters? Academy. Naruto had taken the seat to the far back, near the window. He looked around the room. He found his sisters, Sasuke Uchiha, Hinata Hyuga, Kiba Inuzuka, Ino Yamanaka, Shino Aburam, Shikamaru Nara, and Choji Akamachi. The rest of the seats were filled with civilian children. Their teacher was Iruka Yamino, a simple chunin. He also had an assistant Mizuki. Naruto could sense evil in the man and could also sense the hate he held towards his sisters. This was due to Kodachi's experience in battle and reading a person. Naruto made a very small, unnoticeable flame behind Mizuki and using that, he could see the cursed seal on the man's shoulder. Naruto could do anything with flame that he could do with his body. Kodachi could do more, but Naruto was only training with his flames for 2 years. The highest thing he could do was make a flame clone. It was weaker than a shadow clone currently, but it was still solid. Naruto narrowed his eyes dangerously. This could be a test of his skills. Plus, this man was working with Orochimaru, a man Naruto personally vowed to end due to his life. Later. Naruto had lost the Anbu with simple Jinjutsus and flame clones, and now he was dragging an unconscious Mizuki to the outskirts of Konoha's forests. After tying the silver-haired man up, he slapped him like a bitch. Ow. What the fuck? Mizuki growled before realizing he couldn't rub his cheek. Looking down in confusion, he realized he was tied up. Looking up in preparation to look at his surroundings and attempt to assess the situation, he saw the Namikaze brat. The boy. Mizuki growled angrily. What the hell, brat? Let me go. Mizuki yelled defiantly, struggling around and attempting to rip the robes with his teeth. Naruto nearly smacked his forehead in exasperation at the stupidity of the silver-haired man. Mizuki was about to yell at Naruto again before he received a slap across the face. Shut the hell up. God, you're giving me a fucking headache. Naruto told Mizuki, caressing his temples to ease the growing pain in his head. Now, here's how this is gonna work. You give me the information I need and you feel no pain. You resist and, well, you'll end up with 3rd-degree burns. Naruto spoke, eyes growing cold as he stared into the silver-haired man's eyes. "Bullshit, you little brat." Mizuki yelled defiantly. Naruto was worried, surely if Mizuki made more noise the ninja would find him. Naruto growled, gritting his teeth, before a small orange fire enveloped his hand. Naruto drew back his hand, formed a fist, and punched Mizuki in the gut. The flame, while small and still only having the heat of a campfire, burned through Mizuki's Chunin jacket and his shirt, singing Mizuki's skin. Mizuki spit out some blood, coughing a little. "You think that'll get me to talk, you little brat? Fuck off." Mizuki yelled loudly at Naruto. Naruto's eye twitched. The fire darkened into a deep red before becoming a light blue. Naruto punched the same place, harder. It completely burned Mizuki's skin and slightly burned through his flesh. The wound was already cauterized due to the heat of Naruto's flame. Mizuki went to scream until he noticed that there was now tape across his mouth. "I'll keep doing this until you give me information," Naruto spoke, before a blue flame encased his other hand. He began punching Mizuki in the stomach multiple times. Bam 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 bam. Mizuki was screaming loudly underneath the tape. Luckily for Mizuki, fire had caught onto the ropes and began to burn them off. Naruto stopped, ceased the fire on both his arms and the rope before ripping the tape off. Mizuki's midsection was smoking and now had no skin left. His flesh was melted and drooping downward slightly. Bone was visible and Mizuki barely moved when he breathed. "Now, why the hell do you have a cursed seal?" Mizuki's eyes widened comically after those words left Naruto's mouth. Somebody knew that Orochimaru gave him a cursed seal. Not even his beloved Tsubaki knew that. Mizuki grit his teeth in anger, his rage overpowering the pain in his abdomen. "How do you know I have that?" Mizuki growled out angrily. Naruto smirked. He knew that the mention of Mizuki's cursed seal would anger him, but he had used the time in class to use his flame to inspect the seal. Even though he could barely decipher what it did, Kochi could. You see, when you are an infinitely powerful and timeless creature, you just observe and learn to pass the time. And that's exactly how Kadachi became a seal master. One at the top hierarchy of the Uzumaki seal masters. And since all Uzumaki seal masters are dead, and don't count Kushina because she only knows one of the Uzumaki master seals, Kadachi is the best seal master around the world. I just added a small amount of Kushina bashing in there. I love her as a character and would enjoy reading a Naruto x Kushina, though barely any are out there, but for the sake of this story, she isn't a top-tier Uzumaki seal master. The seal was composed of a storage seal, a crude disguise seal, an entry seal, a conversion seal, and finally a release seal. The storage seal held DNA of an animal of some sort, the disguise seal was meant to make the cursed seal look more complex than it actually was, the entry seal was made to force nature chakra into the seal, and the release seal forced all of that into the bearer. Once Kadachi explained this to Naruto, he understood. This wasn't like the normal cursed seal that forced the bearer to want to go to Orochimaru, it was a simple power booster. Life Flames noticed it. "Now, tell me where the hell you got that seal." Otherwise, Naruto held his hand up as the blue fire returned, except this time it grew lighter and brighter before turning a brilliant white. Naruto used his other hand to forcefully move Mizuki's head to look at a tree, only for the tree to begin melting when Naruto's hand neared it. Mizuki's eyes widened in fear. It would only take one punch from that fiery hand to kill him. "Now you get it. So as long as you answer my questions, you won't be on the other end of this fist. So, first question, where and how did you get that cursed seal?" Naruto demanded. Mizuki stared at the fire, before looking to the melted and drooping tree, before looking back at Naruto. "Orochimaru gave it to me," he said in a clear voice. "And what did he want in return?" Mizuki looked at the cold blue eyes and the boy and shivered in fear from the kai that resided in the depths of those eyes. "The Forbidden Scroll," Mizuki answered, stuttering. "Good boy. Now, here's what's gonna happen. I'm going to turn you in, and you will not tell anyone what happened here. You will tell the investigator and Ibiki exactly what you told me about Orochimaru and the cursed seal, but you will not tell them about me. Do you understand?" Naruto spoke in a deep, slow, menacing voice. Mizuki rapidly nodded his head. "Good. But, just to make sure you don't say anything, I'm going to give you a taste of what will happen if you do." Naruto spoke in a low tone, eyes hardening as he lit his right hand ablaze with a white flame. "No, no, 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 NGNGH. MMMM. MNGHHH. MMMMGGGHHHH." Mizuki's screams continued even after Naruto covered his mouth. Naruto didn't even feel any flesh or anything on his right hand as it slowly sunk into Mizuki's left calf, traveling up from the toes to the knee. Naruto had nothing on his mind right now. It was his subconscious protecting him. If it didn't, Naruto's mind would falter slightly. Even though this was not his first kill, no, he hasn't killed before, but Mizuki will not die. It still bothered Naruto when he felt the squirming of Mizuki and heard his muffled cries of pain into the quiet night. A certain Inu masked Anbu thought he heard something but shook it off as being tired. Hokage's office. The next morning. Minato walked into his office, surprised to find a tied-up and unconscious Mizuki in front of his desk. Said silver-haired Chunin was also missing his left calf. There was also an envelope tucked in between the ropes. Minato rushed over to the silver-haired Chunin, extremely worried. First he checked the wound, surprised to find it cauterized, rather cleanly too. He was also surprised to find that there wasn't a drop of blood anywhere. Shaking his head, he grabbed the envelope and opened it. There was only one sentence. Check his left shoulder. Chapter 5. Doing a time skip because the academy days are boring as hell. Naruto sighed heavily. Finally Kadachi, no more boring academy classes. Rejoice. Today was the last day of Konoha's academy. Naruto and his classmates were 12 and his sisters were at the top of the class. Naruto made himself seem like an average student. Understanding most things, not understanding some, and mildly performing in tests and tournaments. He didn't want to be top of the class because his parents would question where he got such skills because they were jerks. He didn't need to be dead last because he already knew that his father was planning on placing his children with his wife. So Naruto didn't really care about anything as long as he was an average student. Karuni and Tsuni were busy fighting off fanboys and Sasuke Uchiha was busy fighting off fangirls. No one liked Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. At one point he thought that Hinata Hyuga liked him due to how nervous she became around him until he found a marriage agreement on his father's desk. His father and Hiashi Hyuga agreed to marry him and Hinata once they were of age. So, obviously Hiashi had forced his daughter to act as if she liked Naruto. Which, seeing the tiny sparkle and hearts in Hinata's eyes as she looked at Sasuke, was definitely true. Good thing Naruto planned to leave Konoha before he turned 18, right? Once he mastered Kadachi's flame cloak, Kadachi's version of a Biju cloak, Naruto was going to leave Konoha. And if his father tried to stop him, well, let's just say Konoha's ninja would burn to ashes. Even if they sent his sisters, they wouldn't have mastered their Biju forms by then anyway. And Naruto could let Kadachi take over his body for a temporary time, and once he did that, not even a full Kyuubi would stop him. Not even the Juubi would stop Naruto. Only Kami herself could stop Naruto. And once he was out in the world, he would track down the other phoenixes while meditating to ready his body for the fusion of him and Kadachi. You see, he would fuse slightly as he grew, which he had already started, but he would fully fuse with Kadachi in a time or extreme stress, or when he turned 21. And since he was in the shinobi world, it would probably be an extreme stress moment. Which reminds me, are you going to use your flame in the stupid bell test? Kadachi questioned Naruto mentally. That actually got Naruto thinking. Would he use his flames? He really didn't have too many skills that wouldn't reveal anything. He had already mastered and perfected both of his father's jutsus, and he could easily use those to defeat his Jounin sensei, and he could use his flames to beat his sensei even easier than his father's jutsus. He grumbled slightly. He was so focused on perfecting both his flames and his father's jutsus that he hadn't thought of anything else he could use that wouldn't reveal anything. Should I have nothing I could use that wouldn't raise questions? I'd say you could use Kage Bunshin, but that would raise questions. Wait, didn't I teach you an invisibility jutsu? Yay. The wind displacement jutsu, I have an idea, will it raise questions? It might, but he could easily be played off as your sisters being good perfect. Tsuni Uzumaki Namikaze, Karuni Uzumaki Namikaze, Iruka had listed off his sisters, and instantly every boy in the class was staring at Iruka with wide eyes and crossed fingers. Except, of course, him and Sasuke. Looking back slightly, even Shikamaru had looked up with a hopeful look. And Choji had stopped eating. And Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. You three are Team 7 under Kushina Uzumaki. Every boy in class, except Sasuke, groaned loudly. Naruto was groaning, not for being with his sisters, because he knew he was going to be with them, but because his sensei was Kushina. He hated being by her or Minato in the house, and now he was going to have to be with her and his sisters. Kami really hated him. Kushina walked in happily, dressed in a Jounin outfit with her hair pulled back in a large ponytail. Every boy, excluding Naruto but including Sasuke, widened their eyes and began drooling. So, this is where Karuni and Tsuni got their looks. If they turned out to be even half of their mom, whoever they choose was one lucky motherfucker. Naruto just rolled his eyes. Kadachi had seen much better women. Children these days, Naruto, they know no beauty. Naruto sighed heavily. Kadachi might be right, but he didn't care. He didn't have time to care about women right now. Team 7, come with me. She stated happily, smiling and walking out. Naruto groaned and started walking after his mother and his sisters. He looked down slightly, seeing Kiba with his foot out hoping to trip him. Naruto smirked and pretended to not notice the offending foot. When his foot hit Kiba's, he kicked the foot so hard that Kiba flipped out of his chair and fell on his ass. Naruto turned, looked at Kiba over his shoulder, and glared. "Don't trip me, dog lover." Then he walked off. Kiba was scared. If his foot hit something when Naruto kicked it, he would have broke it. Naruto kicked it that hard. On the roof. "Let's do introductions," Kushina stated happily, looking over her children. Her beloved little girls looked happy and excited, but Naruto wasn't even paying attention. He was staring off at nothing with a glazed over look. Truthfully, Kadachi was actually explaining his plan to Naruto. Kushina didn't know that though. "Naruto. Pay attention." Without looking up, Naruto just spoke. "I am. Even if this entire conversation is useless and boring, I have to listen because shinobi should always be aware of their surroundings. I will say, however, that introductions are entirely useless. We are a family and we should know everything about each other. You, mother, were born. When was she born? I have no idea. Your favorite color is green, you are a cage level shinobi in the bingo book as the red hot habanero, and are ranked S. You are slightly lower than the Yondaime Hokage, and are the previous Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails Biju. You can also summon chakra chains due to the Uzumaki chakra inside you. I know everything about Karuni and Tsuni as well," Naruto stated without even looking at his family. He even still had the glazed over look in his eyes. He was, after all, still talking to Kadachi. Kushina and the twins were shocked. Half of the stuff Naruto said Tsuni and Karuni didn't know and Kushina knew he shouldn't know. And he even looked uninterested and bored. Shouldn't he be happy that he was with his family? Shouldn't he be interested in what his sensei has to say? And why does he look like he has a glazed over look? His eyes looked empty, uncaring and cold. Kushina looked on sadly. Her little boy used to have such a warm and happy look in his eyes that were a perfect replica of her husband's own eyes. What could have made her happy little boy this cold, heartless shell? Naruto noticed the silence and rolled his head on his shoulders to look at his family. "Are we done here? I know the stupid test is tomorrow. So either say what you need to now or just say nothing. Either way, I'm leaving to go train." "Which training ground is going to be used for the test?" Naruto questioned, cold blue eyes staring right into his mother's violet eyes. 32. Naruto nodded before getting up and hopping off the roof. Kushina rushed over to catch him with her chains before she noticed he had vanished after he hopped off. Kushina narrowed her eyes. An average student from the academy shouldn't be able to vanish after jumping off the roof. And she felt a chakra spike similar to the ones Minato emitted when he used the Hirshin. Training ground 32, the next day. Naruto was leaning against a tree when his family, minus Minato, showed up. He had his arms crossed and was looking down so that his hair would shadow his face. After all, if his mother saw him smirking she would get suspicious. After all, his sisters were the prodigies. Kushina explained the bell test to his sisters and thinking she was explaining it to him too, but he already knew. Once she was done, the triplets dashed away. Now, Naruto's plan relied on perfect timing. And, well, the plan was teamwork. Even if Naruto seemed to do nothing, his parents would never fail his sisters. And, knowing his impatient sisters, he had to be ready right now. Kushina was sensing her children, sensing that Naruto was nowhere near his sisters. She frowned, this test was about teamwork. She couldn't focus on that though, because she sensed the girls readying an attack. She was too focused on the girls that she didn't notice Naruto's chakra splitting. Tsuni and Karuni rushed out, Tsuni preparing a fire jutsu, while Karuni was preparing a wind jutsu. The fire was powered up by the wind jutsu. Kushina simply used water from the pond in the training ground to block the fire. Gritting their teeth, the girls decided on a taijutsu rush. Naruto sat back and laid down in the tree branch. His clones would do their job and his plan would be perfect. He had perfect teamwork after all, it just wasn't him working with his sisters, it was his clones working with each other. Kushina was too focused with the sisters that she didn't notice the many chakra spikes that were happening around her. Clones were performing the wind displacement jutsu, causing them all to be invisible. Then, they would use the Hirshin technique that Naruto had prepared the day before. He had drawn Hirshin seals in brown ink on all of the trees surrounding the clearing. Now, all he had to do was wait for one of his sisters to go for the bells. Which, Tsuni just did. The red-haired girl rushed Kushina, with Karuni flanking her. Karuni dashed forward, trying to hit their mother with kicks and punches. Tsuni came underneath her left arm, rushing for the bells that were on the right side of Kushina's belt. Kushina spun to her right as Tsuni's hand touched the bells, making Naruto's clones Hirshin. One clone cut the bells loose, before dispelling. Another clone grabbed the bells and threw them at the clone above him, before dispelling. The clone above him caught the bells, before jumping off a clone behind him, propelling him towards Tsuni. The clone he jumped off of dispelled, and the clone previously mentioned put the bells in Tsuni's hand and closed it. Then he dispelled. A small reminder, all the clones were invisible. Once they dispelled, the area was filled with smoke. But Naruto had that covered. He manipulated the oxygen within the smoke and caused the smoke to rise very quickly so his family couldn't see the smoke. His control of oxygen came from his pinpoint control of fire, and he could also control heat like that as well. Part of Naruto's skill manipulating fire without a material for it to burn came from pinpoint control of oxygen and heat. Everything he and his clones did happened within half a second. Kadachi has trained Naruto well. Kushina pushed Karuni away, watching him used as Karuni's arm hooked Tsuni's neck and pulled them both back. She looked around for Naruto until she heard a shout from Tsuni. "I got the bells." Kushina turned around with wide eyes. Seeing the bells in Tsuni's hand, she checked her belt and found the string cut. She narrowed her eyes. Tsuni never cut the string. And even if she tugged it off, she only tapped the bells. Which means that someone else cut the string and let the bells fall into Tsuni's hand. And the only person that would even think about doing that was Naruto. Kushina turned around and stared at Naruto, sitting lazily in a tree with one leg hanging. She narrowed her eyes and stared into his. She was telling him she knew, and he was telling her he didn't care. Chapter 6. Naruto walked calmly into the training ground that his team had recently had their bell test in. He knew at this time that his she lost the right to be his mother when she denied him her motherly love. Naruto knew that Kushina was probably talking to Minato about the bell test, along with all of the other jounin. He didn't care. Plus, he was going to be ready for the questions that his birth parents were going to ask him soon. Naruto didn't care. He knew that his parents didn't have enough evidence for them to force him to do anything. And even if they did, as previously stated, they didn't have enough evidence to back Naruto into a corner so they could get answers from him. Naruto always covered his tracks. It didn't matter if a few nameless jounin ended up mysteriously missing. Hokage's office. Team 1 fail. Team 2 fail. Team 3 fail. Many jounin gave their report. Most teams made purely of civilian students failed. Kakashi's team of Sakura Haruno, Sasuke Uchiha, and a branch family member of the Uchiha clan passed. Uchiha massacre didn't happen because I don't feel like making Naruto kick Sasuke's ass. Though, I'll probably have Naruto kick his ass anyway. Kurenai's team of Hinata Hyuga, Kiba Inuzuka, and Shino Aburama had all passed. Asuma's team of Shikamaru Nara, Choji Akamchi, and Ino Yamanaka passed as well. All jounin looked to Kushina, eager to know if the demon containers had passed. Team 7 pass. I request to stay behind and talk to you, Hokage-sama. Request granted. That is all. Every but Minato and Kushina left the room, all interested in what was going to be said between the couple. Though, only Kurenai, Asuma, and Kakashi actually attempted to listen, eager to get in some juicy details. Now, what do you have to tell me, Kushina-hime? Minato questioned, leaning forward. Kushina sighed heavily. I would have failed that team, Kushina began, shocking those listening as well as Minato. How could the most trained and most successful pair of genin possibly fail? Even if it was Kushina they had to go against, jounin were required to hold back and not use any actual jutsu. So, how could they possibly fail? Tsuni and Karuni were working as a team, but Naruto was seemingly doing nothing. Minato and the listeners nodded at this. Naruto was an average student, perhaps he got frightened and didn't try. Seemingly. He was most likely the main reason the girls managed to get the bells. I just don't know how he did it. I didn't even see him move, much less cast any jutsu or genjutsu. But I know the girls didn't get the bells. Kushina explained, causing Minato to rub his chin in confusion. Tell me exactly what happened, don't take out any details. Minato told Kushina, going into full Hokage mode. So Kushina explained the entire test to Minato, going into extra detail about Tsuni going for the bells. Kushina explained how she pivoted to the point where Tsuni couldn't get anywhere near the bells with her current training. Minato and the listeners nodded their heads. Someone did interfere with the test. But the only people there were Naruto and the twins. Meaning that Naruto had interfered. But the real question was, how? Namika's residence. Naruto was meditating calmly in his room, feeling for the natural energy around him. Kadachi had informed him that the closer he was to nature, the less pain he would feel when he and Kadachi fully merged. Naruto could feel the individual oxygen molecules in the air. Naruto could feel the heat in everything around him for a good mile or so. And he could feel 4 very familiar heat signatures in the lower level of his home. Using the oxygen in the air and the heat in the wires around his house from the electricity, Naruto created a small fire to listen in on their conversation. Do you girls remember seeing your brother do anything strange during the bell test? Minato questioned his little pair of beloved heroes. Both shook their heads to say no. Naruto narrowed his eyes. Leave it to his idiot parents to ask his sisters if he did something. As if they would know to something 2 Cage level shinobi wouldn't. Naruto cut off the flames, fearing that his brain would melt from the stupidity of his family. Still meditating, Naruto could feel his father's heat signature moving up to his room. And sure enough, Naruto's door opened. Naruto didn't move out of his meditation pose, not even opening his eyes. "Yes, father?" Naruto questioned in fake kindness, noticing how Minato's strict pose relaxed at the kindness in Naruto's voice. "Idiot. He can't even figure out that you're faking it when he's supposed to be the best Hokage Konoha has ever seen. Bull. I remember that the Shodai Hokage could take on the 9 tails on his own without needing any summons. Well, he did have the Mokuton, so what? And how the hell?" Naruto cut off Kadachi's mental rant. Naruto knew what he was going to say anyway. How the hell can the best Hokage ever not have perfected his 2 jutsu by now? It's been 12 years. Lazy ass. Naruto agreed. It took the blonde boy 3 weeks to master both jutsu and then another month to perfect them. Now, Kadachi helped of course, but he still did it. "Naruto, I know you did something during the bell test. Why would you hide your abilities from your family? And even that out of the picture, why would you hide your abilities from your sensei?" Minato demanded, trying to seem angry. Naruto didn't move or open his eyes. Minato wasn't worth that. He instead answered quietly. "Because I have no abilities. So there is nothing for me to hide." After all, Naruto got up slowly as he spoke, before opening his eyes slowly and smiling a clearly fake and forced smile to his father. "My sisters are the heroes of Konoha, right? I'm just the stupid dope of the Namikaze family. The failure who can't do anything. A boy who is unfit to be born from the Yondaime." Naruto spoke, staring right into his father's shocked eyes. "The boy who can't amount to anything." Naruto nearly yelled, but calmed down and got back into his meditation pose. "Now, Hokage-sama, please leave my room." Naruto spoke through grit teeth. It took all of his self-control, plus Kadachi's reassuring, to not let Kadachi take control to just utterly destroy his family, Konoha included. But he wouldn't do that. He wanted to savor the feeling of Konoha falling beneath him. In shambles. Buildings lit ablaze. Cries all around him. While that idea appealed to him, it also hurt him. He didn't want to hurt people. He wanted to save people. Naruto began panicking again. Like the time he nearly killed the Danko Mitarashi chick. Naruto's meditation was faltering and his calm was breaking. Minato had long since left Naruto's room, gently closing the door. That was good. Naruto didn't want his family to see his panic attacks. They didn't happen. His thoughts were clouded and he couldn't find Kadachi in his mind. He was struggling a lot. His feet were digging into the ground, shoving his face into the floor. He didn't have control. His body was going crazy. Naruto was breathing very loudly. He gripped his desk, attempting to pull himself up. He failed, falling down and gripping the handle to the drawer in his desk. He pulled it, thinking he could pull himself up with it. Instead, it pulled open, spewing the contents all over his room. Through a hazy eye, he could see his many drawings of phoenixes. Once he met Kadachi, he had stopped drawing. After all, he could see a real phoenix whenever he wanted. But there was one drawing that caught his eye, making his panic attack even worse. It was during one of his darker days. His arm was aching horribly from one of the worst beatings he had ever endured. There were knives, pitchforks, machetes, kunai, anything that they could get through his flesh. He drew the drawing while pulling a kunai out of the arm he was drawing with. The lines were shaky and sloppy, the color was sometimes out of the lines, but it still held more meaning than any other drawing. It was a drawing of Konoha burning underneath the gaze of the powerful phoenix. There were tear stains on the drawing in a few places, showing Naruto's emotional pain during the drawing. And some of the red was smeared and dried, making Naruto remember that he had used his own blood to color in the redder parts of the drawing. Naruto looked past the drawing, seeing the pillow with a fist-sized hole burned through it hidden behind his desk. This served to further worsen his panic attack. Naruto started rolling around, fire sprouting and going out randomly on equally random parts of his body. The white flame spewed dangerously out of Naruto's elbow before diminishing. A harmless yellow flame gently licked the air from his big toe before going out. Then, Naruto tried to scream to the heavens. But, his chest heaved up. All that he succeeded in doing was spewing out a lethal amount of white flame all over his room. Chapter 7. Naruto woke up groggily, looking around at his seemingly untouched room. He sighed heavily once he sensed the slight heat difference between his room and the rest of the house, signifying that he had another one of his panic attacks. He always lost his control over the flames when he was having a panic attack. Thank God his flames didn't require chakra, otherwise his parents and possibly his sisters would send said chakra and that would cause them to go to his room, which would lead them to probably dying due to the uncontrollable nature of his flames when he was having a panic attack. He really needed to deal with those. If he had one during a fight, he'd probably die or something. Actually, now that Naruto thought about it, he probably wouldn't die. Kadachi had told him that flames are always spewing from his body when he was having a panic attack. So no one would be able to get close to him. But then again, any imprisonment jutsu would be able to confine him. Even if he didn't die during these attacks, he needed to solve them. He was always somehow knocked unconscious during the attacks and his flames would stop. So his opponent would only have to Wakami. Damn it Naruto, just shut up about it. Ah, seems like Kadachi had enough of his pondering. Yay. Will you finally tell me how you always manage to cancel out the damage done by my attacks? That's for a different time Naruto. You will learn how I do it and how you can do it soon. Be patient. That was the first lesson I taught you, for Kami's sake. Yeah I know, I'm just curious and soon to be flames are not normal by any means, Naruto. That is all I will reveal for now. Kadachi cut off the mental connection, signifying he was done with this conversation. Naruto got up off the floor and checked the time by looked outside. It was night time, which was obvious seeing as there was a brilliant white moon shining in his face. He growled slightly. He figured now would be a good time to train because no one would really bother him and he wasn't tired. He opened his window and jumped out carelessly. Naruto walked into his team's training grounds, looking at the trees and the clear, shimmering pond. Walking up to one of the training dummies, Naruto started going through the katas for the taijutsu style taught to him by Kadachi. It was called Honken or Flame Fist. Basically, it was a speed encounter based taijutsu style. But, if it was mastered and the user was extremely fast, it was probably the best style in the world. You see, whenever a strike connected, it would be covered with a white flame. Meaning that it would burn through anything. For example, if Naruto punched someone in the face, it would burn through everything if he kept pushing his fist forward. Naruto ran through the katas, making sure that his fist, foot, elbow, knee, anything that would be used to strike his opponent was lit by his white flame before he let the blow connect. Before long, the training dummy was just a singed pile of ash on the ground. Naruto felt like he had mastered it anyway. Now, he tried to think of what he would do next. He wouldn't do physical training, as he forgot to bring his weights with him, so he decided that he would work on something he had planned to attempt to master. When he was asked by Kadachi to discover what his elemental affinities, he grabbed some chakra paper from his father's library and pushed chakra into the paper. It split down vertically and horizontally at the same time before the fourths of the paper burst into flames. It was determined that he had an exceptionally strong wind affinity, stronger than anyone had ever seen, and he obviously had an insane fire affinity due to Kadachi. Now, you might be wondering what this had to do with what he planned to master, and it has everything to do with what he wants to master. First, he wants to master his wind affinity. But that wasn't the main thing he wants to master. Due to his flames not dealing with chakra, he didn't need hand signs to control them. He only had to manipulate the element. So Naruto wanted to master being able to manipulate the fire in front of him while channeling his chakra and using his hands to form the necessary hand signs to use a powerful and fast wind jutsu to speed up his flames. Yes, his flames were fast, but if someone was fast enough they were dodgeable. Naruto just didn't have the pinpoint control that Kadachi had yet, so he was going to need to boost to the flame speed. Plus, one of his priority targets were the other phoenixes so that he could change their views on humans. And every phoenix is born with pinpoint control, so he would definitely need the speed. Naruto decided that he would try this first with his easiest wind jutsu, the C-rank wind release. Great breakthrough. It was essentially just blowing a huge amount of wind at your enemy. While not very offensive, it was famous for its uncanny ability to boost fire jutsus. White flames burst to life behind Naruto and grew larger as he flew through the hand signs needed to the jutsu. Wind release. Great breakthrough. Shouted Naruto as he completed the jutsu and manipulated the flames in front of him, also focusing on making them grow. However, barely any wind came out of his mouth when he completed the jutsu. Naruto roared in anger, spewing his flames all over the sky. The reason he had failed to do what he wanted to do was because he was so focused on manipulating the intensity and the size of his flames, he had barely concentrated on manipulating his chakra. Naruto sighed, dispersing his flames. He then decided that if his flames were already as big and intense as they needed to be for maximum efficiency with this combo, then he would need minimal concentration on actually moving the flames. Less concentration meant that he could concentrate more on the jutsu. Naruto grinned, thinking he would get the next attempt perfectly. After all, he always got the flame techniques correct first try. Bright, large, intense flames suddenly exploded behind Naruto, thankfully not burning his clothes due to the flame-proof seals on his clothes. He mentally thanked Kadachi for creating said seals. He concentrated on the channeling of his chakra and doing the hand signs, as he barely concentrated on moving the flames quickly in front of him. Wind release. Great breakthrough. Calling out the name of his jutsu, Naruto exhaled heavily. A medium-strength wind jutsu impacted with his already insanely intense flames. The flames combined with the wind and shot out forward. Their speed nearly doubled, which was insane for the speed he could already force his flames out. But, it was still too slow. Yes, the flames blurred. Yes, they were at their target within 1 second. No, it was not fast enough. Naruto grit his teeth angrily. Most would just settle for this speed, and Naruto would have, but he had happened to see Might Guy take off his weights, and that man would surely be able to avoid his flames. Any S-rank ninja would scoff at the speed of his flames. He growled slightly. This simple C-rank wind jutsu wouldn't be enough. He calmed down. He knew the only reason he was so good at manipulating and doing the things Kodachi could do with the flames was because he was already beginning to merge with Kodachi. His control was getting better every second. Eventually, the flames would become a part of him. This surprised him when Kodachi explained it to him. Naruto had asked Kodachi why no one had been able to find the feathers that phoenixes eventually lose and regrow back. The answer was simple yet not. The reason that our feathers are never found is because they cease to exist when they fall off of our bodies. When phoenixes reach a certain age, they molt and lose all of their feathers. They then use their knowledge passed down through evolution and instinct to condense and solidify their feathers. Basically, we form a shield of fire around our bodies. It works as a heater, a cooler, a shield, and it also burns anything that isn't at least part phoenix when they touch the feathers. This is why they don't burn you. As you and I slowly merge, you gain more qualities of a phoenix. We are also capable of forming weapons out of the flames, but that is something I cannot yet teach you. And before you go complaining, it is because you and I haven't merged to that point yet. When you are ready, I will teach you. Like I have for the past however many years. Naruto was excited for the training on forming weapons and condensing his flames, but he was patient. Even if increasing the rate that he merges with Kodachi had benefits, it also had drawbacks. His father would find out before Naruto was ready, and due to his skills in speed, ninjutsu, and sealing, Naruto wouldn't be able to beat him without relinquishing control to Kodachi. And his body wasn't physically ready for that yet. Even if it was, he wasn't ready to go out to the open world and live on his own. He stopped trying to train with the combo. He needed to get down hand sign speed as well as chakra control. If his jutsus couldn't keep up with his flames, there was no point in even attempting to use them. Would you rather dig a hole with your hands or a shovel? Of course you would pick the shovel, as it was easier and quicker. That's how it was with Naruto's jutsu versus his flames. There was no reason to use something weaker and risk his life on the battlefield if he could simply burn his enemies to ashes and walk away, their heads in a sealing scroll on his waist, rotting away slowing as he walked towards the bounty collection office nearest to him. Simple as that. In the shinobi world, any advantage was taken. Always. If you didn't take said advantage, you were stupid or just plain arrogant. Naruto theorized that an arrogant Uchiha always died on the battlefield due to them believing they were above everyone else. Idiots. Naruto sighed, wondering what he should do next. He was so focused on thinking that he didn't notice the Anbu sneak up behind him. When a little light bulb went off in Naruto's head, his concentration on thinking stopped and he was aware of his surroundings. How the hell was Naruto so focused on thinking that he had stopped being aware? He had been aware of his surroundings when he talked to Kodachi during the stupid introduction. What the fuck? Anbu-sans, what do you require of me? Naruto questioned, looking over his shoulder. The Anbu were shocked, a mere genin had sensed them, the masters of stealth. The leader walked out and drew his blade. Hearing the sound of a weapons being unsheathed, followed by the sound of 10 more unsheathing noises, Naruto turned around generally bored. Then he noticed their blank masks. Brute shinobi, what the hell does Danzo want with me? Namikaze-san, we were ordered by Danzo-sama to execute you. A monotone voice came from the one in front, obviously the leader. Oh really? Danzo team ordered for my execution. Knowing him, he would probably just want me to become one of you bumbling idiots. He must be pissed at Hokage-sama about something. Whatever, come and attempt to do your assignment. Naruto spoke calmly, surprising the rude Anbu. Seeing his taunting come here motion, they rushed with their blades. As the 11 blades rushed to decapitate their target, Naruto disappeared in a yellow flash. He appeared behind them, clearly bored. If any of you survive my slaughter, tell Danzo that I've done what Hokage-sama could not. Naruto spoke cryptically before he disappeared again. He was suddenly in the middle of the root Anbu, a flaming Rasengan in his hand. The root went to jump back, but found themselves being sucked into the little ball of death. Naruto was pulling away from the ball in his hand, so he wouldn't get hit by the now airborne root shinobi, as they flew into the ball of death, getting burnt and obliterated when they hit the orange ball of compressed chakra and flame. When the Anbu patrolling the area would come across the scene, they would come across a blood-covered training ground that was scorched black in a vortex pattern. In the middle on the training ground, in the middle on the black swirling scorch marks, was a blank root mask. Engraved into the mask with a kunai was a message. Danzo. I do not like having root shinobi attempt to kill me. Chapter 8. Thank you for all of the support I've been getting on this story. It's amazing when I open my email after I've uploaded the new chapter to see follows, favorites, and reviews filling my email. I even get some of people just telling me how much they enjoy my story. It truly is a great feeling. And for that, I thank you all who enjoy my story. Anyway, now that my thanks is done, I am going to get on to the story. Obsession isn't going in the way I originally planned, I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Lately, I've been getting back into the Red vs Blue series again, so I might do a story for that or maybe a crossover with Naruto, so maybe expect that. I don't really know. PM me if you'd like to see a story about that. Minato caressed his temples as he stared blankly at the message written on the blank root Anbu mask. This had caused too many problems to occur. First, he and a specialized team of Anbu and high-ranking shinobi had ransacked Danzo's secret compounds after searching for them. The things he had found in there were almost as bad as Orochimaru's bases. Root shinobi were killed left and right before Danzo revealed that he had many implanted Sharingan as well as cells from Hashirama Senju. On top of that, he still couldn't figure out who was attacked by the root shinobi. He tried to have an Inuzuka figure out the scent on the mask, but the mask and the surrounding area only smelled of blood and ashes. And Minato also couldn't figure out what could have caused such destruction of the area. And to kill so many root shinobi with one jutsu on top of that, they only theorized that person used one jutsu. First, there was a giant spiral scorch mark that met in the center of the training ground, suggesting one jutsu. And on top of that, the Anbu patrolling that night only heard one jutsu go off. They also only saw one bright flash of light. But what was most intriguing was that they saw spiraling white fire spew up into the night sky like a vortex made of white flames. Minato was about to give up when he noticed something he hadn't before. Underneath the nose piece, 2 inches down, 3 centimeters to the right was a small, almost unnoticeable. Minato couldn't make it out yet. He looked out of his window to the village. It was night, the moon shining brilliantly over the village. He hardened his gaze. He would find out who could cause such destructive power and turn them into a shinobi of the leaf so that the village would have a strong protective asset. He pulled over the lamp he used to light up his paperwork when he worked nights before digging in his drawer to grab a magnifying glass. He angled it above the small, whatever it was. For all he knew it could just be a small chunk of the mask missing, but he knew he could never be too sure. He closed his left eye and looked into the glass with his right eye. There it was. A complex seal. It was multi-layered. Minato sighed, putting away the magnifying glass before grabbing a set of glasses that had magnifying glasses attached to them. This was going to be a long night. But Naruto. Naruto glared at the half-nude man standing on a large sword embedded in a tree in front of him and his team. His mother was saying something to the man with a heated glare contest, not noticing how Naruto silently activated a seal on his left shoulder. It was a simple storage seal, one that was 5 times smaller than the ones his mother made. It glowed slightly before a sword found itself in Naruto's hands. It was a deep black, with brilliant orange lines crawling up the blade forming a phoenix drawing. The hilt was orange as well. No one saw Naruto, as they were too focused watching the intense fight between his mother and Zabuza. However, the blade was noticed by a feminine-looking boy hiding in the trees by the ocean surrounding the land of waves. He was wearing a fake hunter nin mask, so that if Zabuza lost the fight, then he would swoop in and save his master. But the boy with the blade intrigued him. He stopped focusing on the boy and looked over to the fight between his master and the red-hot habanero before he froze when he felt the cold feeling of steel on his neck. I've never been one to enjoy being watched. And if you were a real hunter nin you would have intervened and killed the demon of the mist. So that only leads me to believe that you are actually an accomplice of Zabuza. Naruto finished as the fake hunter nin felt the blade pierce his skin. However, the hunter nin felt the pressure lighten as the boy only held him so that he could not retaliate. I do not need Kushina discovering my skill at this moment. Do not think this is an act of mercy or even an act of betrayal to my village. I am going to come for you and Zabuza. And not even whatever bloodline you have will stop me. Naruto sniffed the boy's nape deeply before smelling the blood that had leaked slightly onto his blade. Ah, you are a nice user. Chuckle, that won't help. As the blonde boy finished, the fake hunter nin felt fear for the first time since Zabuza found him. The boy was able to simply smell the bloodline he had. And the boy couldn't sense the scary boy even when his attention to his surroundings was at his max. The boy currently holding his life in his hands had skills that made the boy believe that even Zabuza couldn't stop this boy when the time came when the blonde saw fit to end their lives. Suddenly, a small orange flame slowly enveloped the blade. The fake hunter nin felt a slight pain before the flames were gone. He noticed that there was no more blood and the wound on his neck was cauterized. I don't need evidence for her, Naruto pointed to Kushina to find. Now, go help Zabuza. It seems Kushina has gotten the upper hand. And with his word said, his goal stated, his threat clear, the boy was gone. The fake hunter nin noticed that the boy was now standing next to the other Konoha nin, looking as if he was afraid just like the two girls next to him. The fake hunter nin vaguely noticed that the girls didn't seem to notice he was ever gone. Kushina approached her team, panting and covered in small cuts and blood, a faint smile on her face, before it turned into one of realization, before slight anger and annoyance. She explained to the team that the hunter nin was a fake and that Zabuza was most likely alive. The team made their way to Tazuna's home, with Naruto questioning exactly how Kushina, the swordsman said to be able to take on all 7 swordsmen of the mist at once and come out on top, had a hard time even injuring one of the weaker ones. Kushina trained the team to water walk, something Naruto hated because he generally hated water due to the fact he had a being almost entirely made of flames inside him, and she began to train them in the way of the sword. Naruto scoffed. Kodachi was in the middle of the moderate master swordsman training with him, so basically Naruto was a medium master. He bet he could kick Kushina's ass in a straight sword-to-sword fight. Not to mention that he could cover his sword in flames that could literally burn through the metal of any sword unless it had seals on it. But even then, it would just burn the ink before burning the sword. 6 days later. The day before Kushina estimated Zabuza would attack. Naruto opened his eyes when the sunlight hit his eyes. Sailor Kodachi spoke through Naruto's mental link. What? Why do you randomly speak in an ancient language when you know I don't understand it? It's French, I don't care. I don't know French. It means it's time it is, isn't it? Naruto shook his head with a small smile at the conversations he and Kodachi randomly had. They were so random, before it sometimes suddenly got back to the situation at hand, or just got even more random. Naruto looked over his shoulder, seeing the small seal on his left shoulder where he held his sword. He remembered quite comically that he could either release it slowly for drama and suspension, not to mention enticing fear in his enemies, or he could release it blindingly fast in moments where he needed the speed. Naruto closed his eyes, searching the planet for the tracking seal he placed on the fake hunter nin. His mental eyes suddenly opened at a dark place, with a meeting going on. The small tyrant known as Gato was about to kill Zabuza for his failure by squishing his neck while the man was trying to recover. Naruto would have narrowed his eyes if they weren't closed. That was not honorable. Even if he knew the shinobi world wasn't honorable, that was due to the need to survive. This man was not threatened by Gato. Even if Naruto planned to kill Zabuza as well, he knew to make it painless. That way the man could die peacefully. But this asshole was making it slow and painful. Even if Zabuza was called a demon, Naruto knew the deeper story. Hideout. Plug Zabuza tried to breath, but it was incredibly difficult with the puny man's foot was almost collapsing his windpipe. He didn't even think it was all that painful, but he knew that even though Haku was a boy, the men would use him. That infuriated him. That they would do those vile, disgusting things to a young child, if only he was paralyzed. He should have known Gato would betray him. He was blinded by trying to create a good life for Haku. Look how that turned out. The poor boy would be, Zabuza wouldn't even grace the act by acknowledging it. For people who haven't figured it out, he's talking about rape. As Zabuza began to feel his windpipe collapse, a yellow flash was suddenly in front of Gato. He saw the blonde boy that Haku told him about. The one that threatened to kill them when the time came. But, if that was true, why was he protecting Zabuza? Naruto looked over his shoulder at the confused man. Don't get any ideas. I'm only helping you because I know your full story. I was planning on giving you a painless death because you deserve it, but this, Naruto glared heatedly at the small man that he currently held in a chokehold in the air with his left hand, tyrant needs to be sent to the Shinigami. Naruto finished. Using his right hand, Naruto reached over and touched his left shoulder, before slowly pulling a brilliant black and orange blade into existence, with a dim gold glow emanating from the seal. Please, Alk, I can give you, cough money, women, hell I can even give you, Alk men if you want. Just don't kill me. Gato pleaded, not noticing that the men he had apparently hired to protect him doing the opposite of their jobs. They were standing back, holding a hopeful Haku in their increasingly weakening grip. Gato felt the grip on his throat tighten as the glow disappeared and a blade found itself in Naruto's hand. Zabuza grinned under the bandages that were over his mouth. This kid knew how to put intimidation into even the simple act of drawing his weapon. He liked this kid already. Maybe he could work something out with this boy. Do you honestly think, for even a second, that I would even consider accepting your offer? You, white flames burst to life around the hilt of Naruto's blade, slowly working their way up to the point of the sword as Naruto's rage became more apparent, sleazy piece of shit. Naruto finally yelled as the flames covered the blade fully, black become white as the flames licked the air in random patterns. Naruto threw Gato at the wall, before slowly approaching the man who pressed as close to the wall as he could. You're the trash of this planet. You extort people for your own gain, you fucking bastard. I am proud to have the privilege to rid the world of your taint. With his words said, his opinion voice, Naruto acted upon his words. The sword was embedded into Gato's chest with no resistance. Everyone watched with fascination as the flames from the blade moved into Gato's body before Gato suddenly screamed bloody murder as he was melted from the inside out due to Naruto manipulating the flames inside his body. Naruto made sure that his flames evaporated any blood flesh that was still on his blade before turning his gaze to the men still somehow restraining Haku. Everyone watched in fascination or fear or even a little excitement as flames sprouted in the air behind Naruto. The brilliant white flames grew in size, going menacingly slow towards the thugs in the room. Before they reached them, Naruto used his completed Hirishin to grab Haku and then escape the rage of his flames. The thugs were melted instantly, their screams being drowned out by the flames. Suddenly, as quick as they started, the flames were gone. A mere memory in the minds of the three people left in the room. Now that you two have seen my abilities, I regret having to kill you. Konoha must not learn of my flames, for they would take someone very dear to me away. May you rest in peace in the afterlife. Naruto angled his blade for Zabuza's heart before he heard a cry of wait. He stopped and turned to see Haku. Why don't you come with us to Kiri? We were planning to use Gato's payment to assist the rebels in stopping the vile bloodline purges done by the Yonde Mizukage. Why don't you come with? It seems like you hate Konoha as it is right now. Haku offered to Naruto with a glint of hope in his eyes. Naruto lowered his blade before grabbing the headband off of his forehead. Was he ready? Could he finally leave Konoha? All it would take is simply slashing the leaf symbol with his blade and leaving to assist the rebels in Kiri. Would he do it? Chapter 9. Alright, here is the new chapter. Naruto's decision has been made. Due to an overwhelming amount of votes I made the decision to do this. So do not get angry at me. Sorry to all of those who did not get their opinion chosen. Naruto looked over his shoulder at the Kiri-nin standing behind him, waiting for his answer. Zabuza was being supported by Haku, though he was still as attentive as ever due to the importance of Naruto's decision. Naruto turned his eyes back over to his headband. It was not a matter if he would leave, it was simply was he ready? Did he really want to go and help the rebels? He feared that he would be tethered to another village and other people. He spent every day trying to not make bonds with people after he discovered Kadachi. He would outlive them anyway. And when he went after the phoenixes of the world, he would have people to keep alive due to his bond with them. While, yes, he could mark them to make them immortal like him, it still wouldn't do him any good. But the things that Yugura was doing and the man's ideals clashed heavily with Naruto's own opinions and goals. Someone should never be treated differently. While Naruto knew that this ideal would never happen due to the clashing opinions and thoughts of everyone around the world, it still was his opinion. One that influenced his thoughts largely due to his childhood. He was treated like trash because he did not hold the weakling that is the Nine Tails. His idiot sisters, the ones that were supposedly better than him due to something out of his control. Naruto made up his mind. The Kiri-nin saw orange flames slowly come to life behind Naruto, growing as rage became apparent in Naruto. The Kiri-nin were afraid that Naruto had rejected their offer before he rose and faced them, the flames suddenly latching onto something on the floor. When they looked at his face, they saw a grim look as a warm glow licked across his face due to the flames, creating a sporadic light source. His eyes were shadowed and his bangs were hanging in front of his face. Free from the bindings and restriction of his headband. Just like Naruto was free from the restriction of his old home. A home that hated him anyway. A home that forgot about him. He pivoted slightly and looked at the flames. In the middle of the dull, orange flames was a slowly melting Konoha metal plate. The leaf symbol stretched and slowly became liquid in his vision. Naruto decided that it symbolized Konoha in his heart. The flames at his control and command had burned away any thought of the leaf in his heart. And in his mind. While Naruto did not know where he would go after he slayed Yugura, he did know one thing. No village would hold his loyalty anymore. He would lend his flames to the waters of Kiri and burn away the oil that was tainting the pure waters. Not even Yugura's powerful water affinity would stop Naruto's flames. Not even the Sanbi would extinguish Naruto's flames. When Naruto's team would go to Gato's hideout in search of both him and Zabuza, all they would find is the man's charred remains and a smoldering remains of a Konoha headband. Naruto made sure that his scent was still on it and that the leaf symbol was at least recognizable. His father needed to know that he left on his own will. The blatant show of disrespect would no doubt infuriate the council. Danzo would call for the boy's head, the council would agree, and hopefully Minato had found the seal Naruto left on the mask. It wouldn't reveal that it was Naruto, but it would confuse Minato anyway. Kiri? Naruto was pissed. Why? Because when he entered Kiri with Zabuza and Haku, they immediately had to fight off two squads of Kiri loyalists. That alone pissed Naruto off. And with the fact that he had to get used to creating fire in the middle of mist, which is just water particles, it infuriated him. He could do it, but he wasn't used to it. Itachi ran through an explanation on the skill before suddenly Naruto found himself bound and gagged. He looked up to find Zabuza surrounded by Kiri rebels. "Sorry kid, but until she thinks you're loyal, you're basically a prisoner," Zabuza explained. Naruto glared, flames coming to life behind him. The rebels got the idea and knocked him out. So here he was, darkly staring at an empty tent with his eyes shadowed by his bangs. He was beginning to think he should have just killed Zabuza and Haku. This wasn't worth his time. He had a human race to prepare to save in the future. He needed to train in his new abilities with Kadachi while he merged with the Pheonix. He sighed. He was beginning to feel like an Uchiha because of his attitude. He remembered when he cared about nothing except his family. And then Minato decided to start the girls' training. And Naruto became withdrawn and secretive. And then Kadachi, the light in his darkness, showed up. And then suddenly the responsibility of literally every human was thrust onto his shoulders. It changed him. He needed to have a day where he could just relax. And he just had to realize that when he threw himself into a fucking civil war. Whoever this bitch that Zabuza talked about better trust him fast so that he could just go and get the Yagura business done with. Suddenly, a man with blue hair walked in. He had an eye patch on, with 2 signs hanging off of each of his ears. Naruto faintly noticed that they meant to hear. He was glaring at Naruto with killing intent leaking off him in waves. Is that supposed to intimidate me, Team-san? Or is it supposed to make me sweat? Either way, it's not working. Now, if you would wish for a proper demonstration on killing intent, I'll be happy to oblige. Before the man could react, the most killing intent he had ever felt forced him to fall onto his knees under the pressure. He barely was able to look up just in time to see Naruto burn the metal chains holding him. The heated melted metal didn't even burn Naruto's clothes as he got up and kneeled in front of the man, the killing intent increasing every second. Naruto began to speak when the killing intent reached Biju levels. "I'm surprised no one has come to help you yet. Or perhaps my killing intent has forced them to their knees like it has to you. I should probably stop increasing it so that you don't die of a heart attack. Frankly, I'm surprised an old as shit man like you hasn't died from this as it is, but I digress." Now, Naruto gripped the man's throat and lifted him up, not even fazed that the man was still a foot and a half taller than him. "Tell whoever she is that I don't offer my help lightly. I have my own reasons for helping, and they will stay my own reasons. I came here to kill Yagura and end this pitiful civil war. This whole earning her trust shit is fucking stupid and not worth my goddamn time. So crawl to whoever this woman is and fucking tell her that if she doesn't trust me, I'm gonna burn this whole goddamn place down before I burn down everything that is Kiri related." Naruto growled out before his killing intent ceased and he dropped the man roughly. The man ran away pitifully, allowing Naruto to calmly leave the tent. He noticed that he was underground in a deep cavern lit up by torches. All around him were panting shinobi who were trying to regain their breath after the pressure of his kai. Naruto merely eyed them before continuing on. There was a long river running through the left side of it, probably a channel to the ocean due to how blue and deep it was. Naruto noticed that all of the shinobi were tensed, ready for him to strike. He chuckled lightly. He loved it when people were afraid of him. It made him feel superior to the sisters. But all that ended when he saw a large blob of lava rush towards him with a loud feminine scream of, "You called my trust stupid and not worth your goddamn time." Naruto sighed and rubbed his temples as the lava enveloped him. Konoha. Minato was so close to cracking the seal and figuring out what it was when Kushina burst into his office with the twins in tow. At first Minato thought that it was anger that was on her face, but upon further inspection, he found that it was actually despair on her face. "Kushina Haim, what's wrong?" Minato questioned his wife, seeing his twin girls hug each other whilst crying heavily. "He's gone, Mina-kun. Neri-chan's gone." Kushina cried out before diving into his chest and crying into it. Minato's face was in an O expression, his face paling. "What? Kiri?" Naruto sighed as he jumped to his left to avoid another lava blob. The woman that was so angry with him was wearing a blue dress that showed off a lot of her cleavage. She had ankle-length wavy auburn hair with a bang covering one of her eyes. She had green eyes and full, supple lips with blue lipstick. She had 2 very powerful bloodlines, something that Naruto learned the hard way. Lava and boil release. So, she was a Terumi. And if his information on the rebels was correct, this was their leader. Mei Terumi. Very sexy woman indeed. "I'm going to burn your balls off, you disrespectful fucking brat." A very angry, sexy woman. "Can we at least talk about this over dinner?" Naruto yelled back, grinning when he saw that she faltered and almost fell on her face due to her dashing towards him. She looked up at him in shock and was that hope in her eyes. Before she suddenly saw red and ran through hand sign, she launched a sea of lava at Naruto. "I guess this is the best time to see if my fire is hot or stronger than lava." Everyone watching Naruto was shocked when brilliant, intense white flames suddenly sprouted out behind him, growing rapidly, before they rushed forward and met the lava wave head on. The white flames met the lava, somehow gaining density and pushing the lava back. The flames enveloped the lava, and everyone watched in fascination as it burned and melted the earth inside the lava. Before long, the lava was suddenly a part of the flames. Mei watched in fascination and awe as Naruto walked forward, the flames bending around in him circles as he just folded his arms over his chest. It seems I was right, the flames are stronger than lava. Now, it's your turn to run, Terumi-chan. Naruto spoke, chuckling slightly when Mei blushed heavily before his face got serious. He unfolded his hands before pushing one out with an open palm. Everyone was confused until the flames wrapped around his hand in a fast, intense flaming vortex. Run, Terumi-chan. I still wish to take you out to dinner. Naruto spoke. Mei didn't have time to react as the vortex surrounding Naruto's hand suddenly grew and flew incredibly fast towards Mei. Of course Naruto was holding back as he did not want to harm the beautiful woman. Mei dodged to the left and smirked thinking that the flames would just hit the rock wall. But, her smirk turned into a drop jaw when instead of continuing on its path, the flames bent quickly and charged even faster towards her. Mei was too stuck in her awe that she forgot to move. Quickly, Naruto willed the flames to cease their existence. Mei quickly jogged over to Naruto, awe and fascination written all over her face with a deep smile. What was that? She questioned with intense curiosity. You could call it a bloodline, but it's not a natural one. Naruto answered, with his answer being very cryptic. What do you mean? Mei asked lightly, noticing how Naruto's eyes glazed over for a second before he sighed and sat down in a chair. Mei vaguely noticed that they had made their way to her tent. I don't know why I'm going to tell you this, but understand that you are the only one that I've told, alright? Naruto stated, looking up at her with a worried emotion in his eyes. Mei nodded slowly, realizing that this was a deep moment between the two. I don't know why he's telling me that I should tell you, or even why I want to tell you. But all I know is that he knows something I don't. Anyway, before I tell you, you need to know a few things. Naruto told her, and after seeing her slow and unsure nod, he continued. I am the son of the Yondaime Hokage and the Red Hot Habanero. Naruto heard Mei gasp after he finished. On the night of the Kyuubi attack, I'm sure everyone in the elemental nations knows that my sisters had the Kyuubi sealed into them. Well, I was on the altar during the sealing. And an ancient being was flying in the forests by the Kyuubi during this time. Something more powerful than all of the tailed beasts combined. Something that dwarfs the Kyuubi in size. And, my best friend. Mei was shocked that such a being even existed without anyone knowing. And the fact that no one noticed it during the attack. Naruto laughed. I know. I don't know how no one noticed him either. Especially since he's always on fire. That little tidbit of information surprised Mei. Now she thought that Konoha was just a stupid country for not noticing it. Anyway, his name is Kodachi. He is a phoenix. The legendary ancient birds that are reborn from the ashes of their dead selves. I do not know how most were killed, but I know that Kodachi is just withholding that information from me for a good reason. And another thing, Naruto looked down, staring at the floor. Me and him are merging every second. He says that the speed we merge accelerates during stressful experiences. If I don't have any of those, I will fully merge with him when I am 21. Anyway, Kodachi is the strongest phoenix that is currently known. Every time he mentions it, I feel unworthy. He says he could have easily avoided the sealing. And technically he really isn't even sealed in me. But I am his chosen. I do not know the full explanation of what a chosen means, but Kodachi said it is one of the most important things with phoenixes. But something even worse troubles me and Kodachi. What is it? Mei questioned. Naruto sighed heavily before standing up and staring into her eyes. There are other phoenixes around the world. They were here before the humans were. Kodachi says that he can only sense 5 others. Now, they are dormant. But when Kodachi's intense presence wakes them, they will be angered. They hate humans. And not even Kodachi's rank with phoenixes will stop them. They will not attack him due to their honor system, but they will try to kill me as well. Well, it will pain them to do so because I am his chosen, they will do it because they believe that humans are filth on this planet. Mei clasped a hand over her mouth. This young boy, no older than 13, had to protect his race without a choice. She thought Jinchuriki had hard lives, but this boy even had to do it alone. While, yes, the strongest being currently not a god was merging with him, he still needed to buy time and train with whatever abilities he gets gifted with to stop the phoenixes. Suddenly, her respect soured for this boy. She kneeled in front of him and hugged him with as much care as she could. Alright. Done. However, I really want to show you guys the idea I have for the other phoenixes awakening. I'm just going to write it here so I don't forget. I don't believe that they will awaken anytime soon. 5 incredibly powerful beings were lying dormant in a long-forgotten inactive volcano. They were covered in yellow flames, burning nothing around them. They weren't breathing, as they didn't need to oxygen currently, which is why their flames were so weak. But the strongest one felt something he had longed to feel for such a long time. A glowing red eye snapped open, only one. He could feel it. He could feel the man he had respected even after he left to find his chosen. Every one of his kind wished him luck. But something that he could not remember had wiped most of his kind out. Wait, his memories were flooding him. He would have growled if his body weren't still almost completely dormant still. That woman, when she partook of the forbidden tree, the sudden overload of chakra to the planet killed off most of the phoenixes. Their bodies weren't used to it. And the chakra had prevented them from reforming. He was angry. He brought up his right wing, the one that wasn't pressed to the floor, and brought it down heavily. The sudden force of oxygen brought his flames to life. And it awoke the others. His flames slowly heated, going from yellow to orange to light blue to dark blue, before it settled on a deep red. No one other than Kodachi had achieved the legendary white flames. He was still powerful, and he had the most powerful red flame. He stretched his wings as he rose. His feathers around the round part of his head rose and fluffed out. It made his head look fuller. It was the unique look that he had inherited from his father. It looked like a mane of a male lion. The flames licked his vision, which didn't bother him at all. It made him feel powerful. He wasn't arrogant, quite the contrary. But his hate for the humans flooded his mind and clouded his thoughts. It was good that there were 2 males in his group including him, and 3 females. They could always switch their gender if needed, but it was something that wasn't very honorable in their culture. It was only used as a last resort to be used if their race was nearly extinct and 2 of the same gender lived. And with 3 females, once Kodachi joined, it would be even. He rose to his full height and overlooked those who had lived with him. They were his squad, his platoon. He was the leader, being the strongest of the group. He watched as they all settled on the deep blue flames, the color that most phoenixes achieved. Only Kodachi had achieved the highest level, and he himself had achieved the second strongest. Kodachi and him shared most of the same views. They hated politics and opted instead to remain in the military. The councils were to be respected, but they lost their physical power over the years. He faintly remembered that the oldest council member had been reduced to the yellow flames. The harmless flames. That's why he had a guard who had achieved light red flames. He shook his head slightly to rid him of memories that would pain his heart. He would rebuild the phoenix population. Kodachi would lead them to salvation. And he, Mad Eye, the Kai no Akai Kageaki, blood red brilliance, would happily serve the original brilliance. He turned and watched his platoon stretch and raise to their full heights. Rise. Get your flames to their fullest potential you can accomplish. The vile, disgusting humans will be eradicated. Their filthy chakra must be cleansed from this beautiful planet. Kodachi, the white brilliance, has risen. He will lead us to salvation. Mad Eye called out. But what if his chosen is human? Kamei, one of the females, questioned. Mad Eye looked down, pain and disgust with himself easily seen. It pains me to say, but if that is the cost of our salvation, then I along with Kodachi will bear that pain. Kodachi will understand. And if he doesn't we will kill his chosen. With nothing tethering him to the humans, he will be tethered to his race. To his planet. Mad Eye shouted. His platoon all squawked in agreement. Their shouts would forever mark the beginning of the Phoenix's rise. Their culture would be reborn, their lives restored. While they would not outright attack Kodachi, every Phoenix knew that if they lost one tether to something, they would go to the one that mattered the most next. Even if it pained Kodachi, he would do it. Chapter 10. Naruto stared passively around the rebel base. It had been 5 months, and the raid on Yagura's compound was a week away. Both Mei and Naruto knew that Naruto could simply relinquish control of his body to Kodachi, and the Sanbi would more than likely be a simple annoyance for the Hatabuririansu, for those who don't remember. This is what I believe to be Japanese for white brilliance, but more problems that Naruto was not ready for would arise. He would fully merge with Kodachi, which wasn't really a problem, except Naruto would be a phoenix with no skill in all of his abilities. And when he fully merged with Kodachi, the presence of the Hatabuririansu would awaken all of the other phoenixes and Naruto would have little time to train. And then every human and anything with chakra would be utterly destroyed. So that was the reason the rebels just waited around and trained in their hidden compound, greatly confusing Yagura's forces. Usually the rebel forces were constantly combating the loyalists, so to see them randomly stop and disappear caused massive suspicion in their forces. They were prepared for everything, though they were not ready for what was to come in the next week. After all, the loyalists had twice the forces and supplies. Surely nothing would cause the rebels to attack Yagura's compound. Right. Meanwhile near Kusagakure, deep within the forest. Vince Granier growled lowly to himself as he skinned a small brown rabbit near his cave hideout. He was an S-ranked missing nin from Kusagakure. And the funniest part. He wasn't even a native from the village, let alone the land. He actually hailed from the furthest corners of the land of lightning, away from Kumagakure, so far away that the village didn't even know his family existed. And for good reason. He had a fucking god sealed in him. One from a long-forgotten religion. The god's name was Fenrir, son of Loki, slayer of Odin. Eventually, Fenrir had slain every god from the religion and every being of importance. Then he came to the elemental lands, a realm ruled by Vince's religious gods. This invasion and sudden influx of power enraged Kami, and she forcibly sealed Fenrir with inhumans. However, Vince was the only one to befriend the god and therefore gained power from him. He was drawn to Kusagakure because of the forest surrounding it and eventually became a ninja. But, once he became S-ranked, they kicked him out. Their military couldn't contain him and they had no reason to believe he had blind loyalty in them. So, they naturally branded him as a missing nin. He didn't care. Every time they sent ninja to try and force him out of their forests, he merely killed them and ate them as dinner. He hunted. He had a giant fucking wolf god sealed in his gut. Of course he would gain attributes from his tenant best friend. Suddenly, Fenrir made himself known by giving Vince a mental image of him. He was as tall as the Hokage mountain, flames coming out of his mouth and eyes. He had a black-gray mane, molten rocks occasionally on his body. Remnants of the chains that tied him down because the gods feared him still remained on his body. His upper claws were molten, chains covering the glowing red forearms. The same with his lower calves. Overall, he was extremely scary. He raised himself from his all-fours position to simply standing. Behind you. 2 high-power enemies. They will make for a great dinner. Vince, use the molten claws. If needed, unravel the chains. Fenrir told Vince before the image disappeared. Sasori stared at the hunched-over man. He didn't seem all that dangerous. He had black hair with gray streaks spiked up in the direction behind him. Though, the hair didn't seem to make him old. He wasn't wearing a shirt, showing off his tanned skin and rippling figure as he hunched forward. He was wearing simple dark green, ripped shorts. He looked over his shoulder, showing them his golden eyes, lean jaw, and elongated fangs. He growled, rising slowly to show them that he had been skinning a rabbit. Though, Sasori didn't know exactly what he was skinning it with. Vince looked at the two. One hunched-over idiotic puppet man, one orange-haired freak with purple eyes. Both wearing black cloaks with red clouds. He grit his teeth in pain as his forearms and calves changed to match Fenrir's. His tanned skin became molten-looking, his fingers and toes became claws. Chains came from his shoulders and wrapped around his forearms, as well as chains from his thighs wrapping around his calves. They were golden in color. I'm going to enjoy dinner tonight. Wood might not taste good, but whatever is inside you puppet man ought to taste great. Vince yelled out at them, hunching over before launching at them on all fours. Sasori stayed where he was, confident that Pain's diva path could handle the feral man. Though, it unnerved him that this Vince person knew he was hiding in his scorpion puppet. He glared at the rapidly approaching man as Pain raised his right hand slowly, before yelling out, Shinra Tensei. Smoke bellowed out as the gravity push hit Vince Granier, and Sasori was slightly disappointed the man didn't show any fight. Sasori couldn't finish his thoughts, as glowing claws burst from the smoke and clawed through his puppet slightly, leaving a scorched claw mark that would surely remind him of this man. How had he withstood the almighty push? Vince growled out as he continued swiping at the fast orange-haired freak. That strange technique had fucking hurt. A cry of Bancho Tenon hit his enhanced ears before he felt himself propelling towards the orange-haired freak who was raising both hands at him. He knew what was going to happen, so he dug his claws into the ground and raced at the man, increasing his speed with a strange technique that was bringing him to the man. He knew that the two different techniques would rip him apart if used in conjunction. He had to get to the man before he called out the technique. Pain's eyes widened in shock when he saw the man start to rush him. He knew what Pain was going to do. He tried readying his Shinra Tensei faster, but was disappointed because he felt molten claws dig into his body, forever leaving a scar on his diva path, Yahiko's body. Vince was becoming an annoyance. He needed to beat the Wolfman into submission so that he could get this powerful Wolfman into the Akatsuki. He needed a replacement for Orochimaru, well not really, but he knew Vince was powerful. And his first task would be to kill Orochimaru. Surely a man that could harm Pain would find Orochimaru a worthless challenge. Even with his regurgitation jutsu, Vince would end the Snake Sennin's life. Why won't my dinner fucking die already? Vince bellowed out before the chains began to unravel on his forearms. He gripped the ends of them before whipping them around Pain's body. His eyes widened before he felt them wrap around his neck. Vince heaved and Pain's diva path died. Nagato ordered all of his other paths to his diva path's body. Vince grinned happily when he saw 5 more orange-haired freaks around the dead one. Best dinner ever. Vince yelled out happily, forgetting about Sasori who studied the man from the backgrounds. The Naraka path revived the diva path, causing Vince to growl. What? Why is my dinner still resisting even after I've killed it? Vince growled out angrily before he was suddenly constricted by multiple Rinnegan-eyed snakes. He growled when he realized he couldn't move. The diva path walked forward, nodding to the animal path slightly. He grabbed Vince's head and pointed it at him. "You work for me now," he said before Vince was released. "Follow or die." The diva path said simply. Vince growled before obliging. Even Fenrir wanted to follow the guy. After all, if there were others as strong as him, then his pack would be unbeatable. You are the alpha. The alpha of my pack. Please lead me to the other pack members," Vince said calmly, bowing slightly. The diva path smirked before saying. "You are now part of the Akatsuki pack. Follow." Konoha. The day Minato discovered that Naruto was gone. What? Minato questioned his crying wife and children. His skin was pale, his eyes wide. His son was gone. How? Why? Where did he go? We found his headband be burned and melted. Mina K-kun, we have found his Hiroshin seal next to his headband. Kushina stuttered, making Minato widen his eyes. He had given his kids a Hiroshin seal when they turned 8 so that if they were ever in danger they could activate the seal and Mianto would protect them. Only his family knew how to remove the seal, so it proved that Naruto had left on his own. So it was true. His family was falling apart. Suddenly, the seal on the root agent's mask glowed before white flames burst out. They showed a giant bird fighting the Kyuubi before beating the Kyuubi easily and stepping on its body victoriously. Then, it restarted the imagery. It just kept replaying and the flames never extinguished. Minato couldn't sense chakra in them either. What did it mean? Why was it here? His family stared at it curiously before Tsuni tried to put it out with a simply water jutsu. The water just became steam without even touching the brilliant white flames. It would become a permanent thing on Minato's desk. Every day from here on he would ponder its meaning. For Naruto, it symbolized that he would eventually kill the Kyuubi once he was done with the other Biju of the world. And once the Kyuubi was dead, hopefully Kadachi would fully merge with him. It would be two very different things to two very similar men. And one day, they would oppose each other. Fight for their beliefs. Fight for their friends, for their families. Chapter 11. Alright, here it is. The 11th chapter of Pheonix. Before we start, I'd like to thank you all. 30,337 views, 213 favorites, 288 followers, 153 reviews, and 10 communities. Woohoo. Thank you all for the support. The dark figure moved silently through the mist-covered country, hopping from building to building and avoiding the chakra signatures he knew belonged to his enemies. He looked to his left and saw a large pillar-like building spiraling from the ground into the point at the top. His eyes narrowed before jumping towards the building and using his chakra to grip the side of the building, cracks forming around his fingers as he crawled upwards. He kept climbing, careful to avoid the windows so that he couldn't be caught. The guards outside the building didn't notice him due to the cover of the darkness that came when the sun left. When he neared the largest window he pulled his hood further over his face, preparing for the mission he was about to embark on. If it worked, then in one day the mist-covered nation would finally be rid of its turtle tyrant. He carefully opened the window, making sure he placed the silencing seals he had on him first. He crawled in the room silently, noting the fact that not a single guard was in his sight. Though, he knew that there were guards in the room. He smirked silently, just as he couldn't see them, they couldn't see him. He crawled even slower to the bed in the middle of the room, sliding underneath it before pulling out a syringe. It had a large needle, because he had to stab the person above him with said needle, through the bed. Carefully, he sensed the chakra signature, before slowly stabbing the needle into the chest of the person above him, noting how the person started screaming loudly in pain. He grinned solemnly, not bothering to be stealthy anymore. His mission was completed and the military power and strategies of the tyrant took a huge hit. He pulled out the envelope he carried with him as the lights turned on, placing it on his chest in clear view before taking a knife he had also prepared. But the peaceful grin, his throat was cut. As blood pooled around him, his last thoughts were ones of peace. He had ensured that his country would be free of the bloody civil war and that his leader, Mei Terumi, would enact her plan and win tomorrow. My name is Cho Herrick and I have completed my mission. Cho could feel his body getting colder as he heard the thump from his target. I have worked hard to ensure that all I care for is safe. He felt the last amount of his life leave him as the bed he was under was lifted and thrown by a short man in anger. Kami-sama, I'm ready. Fury Rebels Base. War Tent. The auburn-haired leader of the rebels sighed heavily. A loyal Anbu-level shinobi named Cho Herrick just left on his assassination mission. As long as he succeeded, the rebels would win tomorrow when they raided Yugura's bases. Why was she so confident? The man Cho was sent to assassinate was the main strategist and was one of the main reasons Yugura kept winning. The man was a Nara-level strategist, as well as the man who kept Yugura smart and in control when using the Sanbi's chakra. While they could have just allowed Naruto to storm in there and burn everything into the ground, they were still planning to anyway. With the strategist, Naruto may have been forced to let Kadachi control his body, and that would bring more trouble than good. While Yugura was powerful, an entire village couldn't handle an average Pheonix, let alone an enraged team of them. Though, May still worried for the blonde. The Hidden would no doubt be there, and they would record what Naruto did. The Hidden were a small group of people that were literally impossible to sense unless you were looking at them. They were a small group of people born with an incurable and rare disease. The reason they couldn't be sensed is because they had absolutely no chakra at all. They decided to band together and create the group. The Hidden villages and missing nin alike all pretty much unanimously agreed to never harm a Hidden if they met one. Why? The Hidden were the people that published the bingo book, without them the bingo book wouldn't exist. The Hidden villages needed the information on powerful shinobi, and the missing nin prided on whatever rank they were. Though, no one knew where they operated from. Konoha wouldn't obey the restrictions of the land when looking for Naruto, due to his relations with the Yondaime. Kumo would want his power, and Iwa would want his head to gloat about it to the Yondaime. May had offered Naruto an official position with Kiri, but Naruto said that he couldn't be allied with anyone because he needed to travel and train. Plus, Naruto didn't want Kiri to possibly go to war with the other villages because of him. Not that Naruto wouldn't come out on top. May sighed heavily again, before looking over the plans again. The Togakur. Vince crawled on all fours towards the seemingly innocent house in the middle of nowhere, but he knew better. Sasori had informed him that this is where the entrance to the main part of Odo was. Seems he was right if the 15 Anbu-like shinobi that suddenly surrounded him was any hint. He had the Akatsuki cloak on, so it made sense that Orochimaru might be wary of him. Vince had no partner because he worked better alone. He proved he was fine alone when he captured the Four Tails alone. They didn't plan on going after the Biju yet because they still needed money, but Vince needed to prove himself. So Sasori's partner ended up being a blonde freak obsessed with explosions, and Vince kinda hated the new pack member. All of this ran through his mind as he slaughtered the shinobi that surrounded him. He always kept the molten claws and chains out since joining, because it was incredibly painful to change into them. Before, he didn't do it because they always burned his prey, but the Akatsuki made sure they add heat-resistant utensils and stuff like that. Though, Vince still ate it like a wolf. He dropped the last body, before dropping back onto all fours as he continued slowly towards the house. As he neared it, angered the Orochimaru still hadn't shown his face, said snake came out of the ground in front of him. Vince sniffed the snake, ignoring whatever the pale man was saying. He narrowed his eyes, he could smell that this one was a clone. He snarled, swiping through the clone and watched as it melted into mud. He raised his head and sniffed again, before grinning and dashing off behind him. So the snake wants to run, huh? Hehehe, haven't had a good hunt in a while, Vince thought happily, dashing into the woods as he followed the pale snake scent. The Akatsuki had released their hound on Orochimaru, and the Sennin wouldn't continue living anymore. Kiri. The next day. Naruto walked with the forces of the rebels behind him. He was wearing clothes eerily similar to Zabuza, with the camouflage pants and bandages around his face. However, he had a deep blue shirt on as the only difference. He still had the seal on his shoulder that held his sword, and he was fully prepared to use it to rip apart the loyalists. He looked behind him, seeing the determined look on Mei's face, the anxious look on Haku's face, and the excited look on Zabuza's face. Naruto turned to look at the spiraling building in front of him, a bored look on his face as Yugura's forces started running around and getting prepared when they saw the rebel forces. The last battle of the Kiri civil war had started, and Naruto would gladly start it. Running forward, Naruto unsealed his sword in a golden light. White flames surrounded the black blade, creating a strange contrast. But no one cared. Especially when the rebels watched as the loyalists melted and the loyalists tried to combat him. Naruto spun around, white flames whipping around him and burning through the enemies surrounding him. He crouched, his sword in a reverse grip angled upwards, and he made one-handed seals, something Haku had taught him. Wind release. Overwhelming wind. Naruto yelled out, the flames from his blade growing and rushing in front of him as his cheeks puffed up. Naruto released the hand seal as the white flames were in front of him. A tsunami of white flames flew at Yugura's forces, causing them to try and run but fail. When Naruto called off the flames, there was a clear-cut path of red slop in between the tight forces of Yugura. The other forces yelled in anger, running at him with renewed vigor. Too bad that's what Naruto wanted. Mei ran into the forces, blowing boiling steam all over them and burning their skin off. Zabuza ran forward, doing spins and jumping in the air as he sword sprayed blood all over Kiri. Haku was freezing anyone in her path, a random rebel running forward to smash the ice loyalists when Haku moved past them. Naruto looked behind him as he jumped off of a sword he had to dodge, surveying the damage to their forces. He growled when he realized that some rebels were getting destroyed by a water-using Jinchuriki known as Yagura. His eyes lit aflame with rage before he gripped his sword in a reverse grip and rushed through the battlefield. The loyalist jumped at him and Naruto dodged to the left while holding out his sword. Said weapon, he really needed a name for it, cut through the shinobi's waist and Naruto didn't need to look back to know that the man was now two halves. The group of 3 Chunin rushed him, going through hand seals and trying to pull off a combination jutsu, but Naruto had flames come to life in their bodies, melting them much like maize lava. Shinobi attempted to stop him, either getting cut by his sword, getting burned, or simply swatted away with a wind jutsu. Naruto was going to confront Yagura, whether the short Sanbi idiot wanted it or not. Yagura grit his teeth, slaying another bloodline lover rebel, before he turned to see a white ball of flame rushing him. His eyes widened before he jumped back to dodge. His danger sense went off and he had just enough time to whip his staff in front of him as a deep black sword covered in white flames connected with it and he had even less time to drop said staff as the blade burned through it, almost slicing him. He looked at the one wielding said sword and growled when he found a stupid blonde gaki glaring at him coldly. The RRR, I've had enough of you stupid bloodline lovers thinking you can win this war. I am Yagura. The Mizukage. I have the power of the Sanbi at my hands. You think you can combat a Biju? Yagura growled out. The blonde smirked, surprising him. Naruto raised his blade horizontally, let's see. He said in a low voice. Yagura growled, red chakra surrounding him as a tail formed. Naruto grinned, flames exploding all around him and forming a sort of armor around him. All fight stopped as people turned and watched the two heavy hitters rush each other. Yagura roared as he tried to swipe as Naruto. Naruto pivoted, jumping in the air before slamming down onto the small cage's back, satisfied with the crack he heard. His satisfied face changed to an oh shit face when the red chakra tail wrapped around him, throwing him into the pillar-like cage building. Dust exploded everywhere, making Naruto grin as he pulled himself out of the building. He wants to play the whole destroy buildings type of fight. Okay, Naruto thought, jumping out with his sword out. Yagura's eyes widened when a loyalist yelled at him to watch out but couldn't react in time as Naruto gripped the back of his head and started repeating slamming it into a random building. Naruto then flipped the cage before backflipping and kicking him in the gut, causing the airborne Jinchuriki to fly through the air and go through the pillar building. Yagura was surprised. No one had ever been able to fight him in his tail form. He growled underneath the rubble of the wall he had blasted through. 2 more tails formed and the red chakra became fuller and his eyes became white. Naruto stared at the dust and watched disappointedly as a red and black Yagura walked out. As Yagura roared and rushed him, Naruto began manipulating the flames surrounding the battlefield. They intensified and became white and flew towards Naruto in spiraling towers of flames. Naruto moved his hands, his sword on his back and manipulated them downward as Yagura almost reached him. The flames rocketed towards the Jinchuriki, hitting him dead on and forcing him back. Rilg. Yagura roared out as the flames carried him into the air before attaching themselves to his body and burning through the vile Yaki. Yagura got so mad during the fall that the Sanbi slowly started taking over as he created a crater in the ground. Naruto was prepared for anything, but he was still kind of surprised to see the 3-tailed turtle erupt from the crater and roar at the skies. Naruto knew the seal was still intact, as the Sanbi was easily half its normal size, but he still had to fight a Biju. God damn it, it's just one of those days apparently. Naruto gripped his sword before using his flames to form wings and fly up into the air to face the Sanbi. Naruto formed a large humanoid body out of the flames, Naruto when he works with Kurama in 9-tails Sage mode. It formed a flame shield and Naruto's sword erupted in flames and grew larger. The Sanbi roared, water sprouting from the water and the mist, forming a giant ball of water before the Sanbi launched it at Naruto. He held the shield up, temporarily being blinded from the act, and when the ball became steam, Naruto wasn't prepared for a spinning turtle to slam into him, cracking the shield and sending the flaming body flying into the ocean. Mei thought Naruto died, still not realizing his flames were not able to be put out by water, and was shocked when the flaming body exploded out of the water before rushing at the Sanbi. Said turtle roared, but then yowled in pain as Naruto's sword pierced its shell. The shield Naruto was holding disappeared and the giant flaming hand gripped the Sanbi's back. Said beast roared in fear as Naruto began driving the sword further into its body. Everyone watched in awe as the sword pierced the shell. The same shell that was widely believed to be impenetrable. The Sanbi roared in pain before all of the Yaki disappeared and a now dead Yagura plummeted from the sky towards the ground. Konoha. 1 week later, Minato's office. Okazama. You must read this. A random Chunin yelled as he ran into the office and handed a new bingo book to Minato. What am I supposed to read? Minato questioned, worried about his son because he still hadn't gotten any leads on the boy. Turn to page 65. The Chunin anxiously told him. Minato sighed but did as he was told. His eyes widened once he found the page. Name: Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Alias: The White Brilliance. Ninjutsu: Unknown. Ninjutsu: Master. Ninjutsu: Unknown. Ninjutsu: Moderate. Chapter 12. Aftermath. 3 years later. The lone, cloaked figure walked silently through the forests of Kusa. He was just avoiding the authorities, constantly moving around so that Konoha did not find him. Well, so that any country that wasn't mist found him. This is Naruto, the White Brilliance. He is further along his merging with Kadachi, now having to cover up to avoid being caught instantly. The reason for this is because one half of his face has pulsating white lines going up it, his entire left eye being a glowing white as well now. The lines were actually his veins, pulsating with the white flames that he controlled. If one looked closely into his left eye, they could see sporadic flames that were in his eye, forming what needed to be formed. His wardrobe had changed. He now sported a long, black cloak to hide his face, as well as his left hand. Will be explained in a little. He wore armor-plated shoulder pads, making him look like he had huge broad shoulders. The 17-year-old was large, but not huge like the pads made him look. His legs were tight, all black like his chest, except they had white flame marks running up like. His boots were white, with black flames running through them. On the back of his cloak was a white symbol of a burning phoenix, drawn on by Naruto himself. He brought his left hand up to look at. What he saw was a flaming skeletal hand. Dim yellow flames forming the tendons and muscles of his hand, while burning white flames surrounded the combination. This provided the best protection, as well as if he ever lost concentration in a fight, yellow flames were on an instinctual level when it came to forming muscles. Phoenixes that are injured in a fight conjure up replacements before they can properly be healed. Some have to permanently use flames. Naruto put his arm back down, lowering the white flames down to yellow, so he could put it in his pocket. He had gotten used to his left hand, a sign of his further merging with Kadachi. When you looked at his forearm, you could see as the muscle tissue and skin thinned out and slowly became flames. And Naruto was right-handed, meaning originally his right hand was his power fist. But with the flames and the added strength they give, his left fist was not the power fist. Anyway, Naruto was on his way to investigate one of Orochimaru's labs, hoping to find someone leading to the snake's whereabouts. He hadn't been sighted for 3 years, ever since Naruto was in the mist. Naruto stared down at a tiny snake statue, the only thing Orochimaru needed to tell where his bases were. Naruto bent downwards, extended his flames into the soil to search for where the actual base was. He found it about 3 yards to the right of where the statue was. He walked over to the spot and grinned before smashing the ground with his left fist. He fell through the ground before landing on his legs in the base. Intricate lines and details lined the walls and the floor, as well as the ceiling. Honestly, Naruto was disappointed that guards or even experiments didn't rush over to kill him. Hell, Naruto wanted to crack at Orochimaru, the sick bastard he was. "Hello?" came Naruto's disappointed moan. "Guess he ain't here." Naruto came Kadachi's 2 cents. "Oh shut it. He's either dead or his experiment fucked up and he is like a chair or some shit like that," was Naruto's intelligent reply before he further extended his flames to search for any evidence. He closed his eyes, the white side of his face pulsating more as the flames extended. Nothing. Wait a minute, one tendril on Naruto's flames had managed to find something. The mutilated eye of Manda, the snake summoned boss. Orochimaru wasn't stupid enough to challenge Manda, so that means that something else challenged Manda and won. He could see where claws, burning hot ones, scorched through the eye and completely demolished it. But the Naruto began to read through the letters with the flames. The notes, Orochimaru's journals, anything. Log day 27. A strange member of the group I used to be in, the Akatsuki, has still not stopped his pursuit. He hasn't even stopped to eat. He has been chasing me since I started this log. I do this purely to record my last thoughts, as I know that even chakra cannot sustain me for much longer, and even now the member's chakra supply is twice mine. Whatever defenses I throw at him, whatever traps I plant, anything is useless against him. He just yells about his prey fighting back. That I should stop running and accept death. PFFT, fool. I have food here somewhere. Experiment notes. Project Akatsuki. I have acquired all of the necessary DNA samples, now I just need a good host to make the perfect body for me. But the only host worthy is a Jinchuriki. Perhaps Konoha's twins. Or maybe the sand boy from Suna. Either way, I need a host. Thoughts of a snake. Kabuto, my assistant. I oddly believe he is out to kill me. Or perhaps replace me as the snake summoner. Either way, I do not care. He is here to serve and act as a backup host. Though he does not know it, I implanted a remote detonation explosive note that reacts to my chakra. If I throw even one jutsu at him, even if I miss, any rebellions he might plan will be ended. As Naruto read through Orochimaru's notes, he couldn't help but be sickened and intrigued. Sickened at what he had done and thought, but intrigued on the Akatsuki. According to Orochimaru's notes, the snake was, at some point, a member of the mysterious group. It seems that the only thing Orochimaru knew was that the strongest missing nin were being assembled to collect the Biju for some odd reason. Naruto almost wondered why they didn't contact him, maybe they were already filled. Either way, Naruto need to know as they people could threaten his sisters. He may not like them, but family is family. If he couldn't continue the line, someone else needed to. As Naruto crawled out of the base, he found another note. Thoughts of a snake. I can't help but think that something bigger is happening in the Akatsuki. Meh, as long as it does not interfere with me and my plans. They have good resources too, and their skills and bloodlines, perhaps I should take them and make a host of Sharingan, Immortality, the Rinnegan, those paper abilities, everything could be mine including my vengeance. Naruto couldn't help but wonder exactly how good the Akatsuki were, considering that the more and more Naruto read, the more and more obsessed with them Orochimaru became. It was like Orochimaru felt an obligation to take their powers, as if they were children with candy the snake wanted. And it seemed, during the year before the wolf as Orochimaru began calling it, started chasing him, Orochimaru became paranoid that the Akatsuki would find out about him stealing their DNA and planning to kill them with their abilities. Well, he was right anyway. Not that Naruto cared, he just needed to find them. And stop them before their bigger goal became a problem. Naruto knew that something bigger than anyone was prepared for was going to happen. You don't assemble the strongest people and gather the strongest demons for nothing. 2 weeks later. Naruto was delving deep into the Akatsuki, following them when they were spotted. It seems they travel in pairs, using their abilities to match each other. Only one worked alone, and it must be the wolf that Orochimaru talked about as he hunted, ate, and killed like a lone wolf. Using claws and an odd set of chains to snare and kill anything with brutal efficiency. It intrigued him until one day he felt a presence behind him. You should really stop digging into things that could get you killed. Said a pair of voices behind him, causing Naruto to calmly turn and see a strange plant-like thing wearing the robes of the Akatsuki. Oh, I see. I wondered when you guys would learn of my digging. Though, I can't recall ever caring about whether you found out or not. Naruto taunted, more so thinking to himself out loud. The guy in front of him was a fucking plant, he could easily just use flames and melt the poor bastard. It's just a fair warning to watch out. The thing finished, sinking into the ground with its Venus flytrap-like head disappearing slowly. Chapter 13. Confrontation. 2 more years had passed, and the Namikaze twins were Chunin now. Currently, along with their team, they were hunting a pair of Akatsuki members. The team consisted of Tsuni Namikaze, Karuni Namikaze, and Shikamaru Nara. They had a Jounin leader in the form of Kakashi. They ran through the trees, intending to put an end to the lives of the 2 Akatsuki members they were following. They did not know their identities, seeing as they were in their cloaks and hats, but they were prepared for anything. They had read up on all the information they knew about the Akatsuki, mainly their intense and perfect teamwork, overwhelming power, and sheer evil. What they did not know, however, is that this confrontation would mean so much more. But the Akatsuki pair. 2 lone figures wearing black cloaks with red clouds were walking down a lonesome dirt road, aware of the team following them. Naruto-kun, you do know that your sisters are following us, yes? Questioned Itachi. The figure beside him nodded calmly, turning to look at him. Naruto had joined the Akatsuki shortly after meeting Zetsu. He had figured he would destroy the group from the inside. Itachi had confronted him when Naruto intercepted a mission originally meant for Itachi and Kisame. After killing the shark, Naruto went after Itachi with cold, uncaring eyes. They clashed, Itachi slowly being overwhelmed by Naruto's skills with his sword and fire combos. Eventually, Itachi asked Naruto why he was betraying the Akatsuki and, feeling Itachi deserved an explanation, Naruto told him his plan. This shocked Itachi, before he said he had a similar goal, fearing that the group would destroy the peace that the nations had created. The two came to build a friendship, and after creating a fake story on how Kisame was killed, Naruto was given a partner in the form of Itachi. Yes, I am aware. It seems that this confrontation is suddenly much more important than before, Itachi? Countered Naruto in a joking manner, before they both turned around and suddenly stopped. Itachi spoke, already knowing Naruto's voice would no doubt cause too much commotion too quickly. Come out Konoha Shinobi, we know you are there. He spoke with no emotion, already knowing that both of them alone could handle the group and that's without their perfect teamwork. 4 ninjas that Naruto knew well dropped from the trees, clearly prepped for a fight to the death. Akatsuki. We know of your plans to capture all of the Biju. We are here to stop you from completing your goal. Shouted Tsuni confidently. And yet you bring the 2 Kyuubi Jinchurikis to our doorstep. Stated Itachi, prompting a chuckle from Naruto. Shikamaru chuckled a little, before saying. Heh, guess we never thought of that. he stated before forming hand seals quickly. Without saying anything, the shadows of the entire Konoha team rushed forward, attempting to capture the shadow of the two Akatsuki members to trap them. They stood there without moving, allowing themselves to get captured. What happened next shocked the Konoha team. Brilliant white flames spewed out of every opening of the currently mysterious Akatsuki member, destroying the shadows of everyone around, therefore counteracting Shikamaru's jutsu. Young Nara, you of all people must know that in order to form a proper plan, you must have knowledge on your enemy, yes? Questioned Naruto, removing his hat. What was revealed shocked the Konoha team. Half of Naruto's face was made out of white flames, sporadically shaking everywhere. It was cut oddly, like a scythe on his face. It left his whisker marks intact, but an arc from the left side of his face stretched across his eye and continued down his nose. The eye that was covered was made from blue flames, flickering with amusement. The hand that he raised to remove the hat was also made from the mysterious flames. Naruto! Shouted his two sisters, rushing forward only to be stopped by Kakashi. Don't run to your enemies, no matter your connections with them. The Jounin stated, looking at Naruto as he said it. You should listen to our father's favorite student, he speaks words of wisdom. Naruto stated calmly, before rushing them, contradicting Kakashi's statement anyway. The twins reacted, rushing him while Shikamaru and Kakashi took on Itachi. Kakashi-san, it is good to see you again. Stated Itachi, blocking a strike from Kakashi before flipping the man in the air. Pleasure's all mine. Shouted Kakashi, rushing forward with a Rikiri in his hand. He struck Itachi, only for the Uchiha to explode in a shower of ravens. I believe you are mistaken, Kakashi. Countered Itachi as he stabbed the man with a kunai, staring as the man fell to the ground in pain. He turned around, rushing Shikamaru. Said Chunin jumped back, catching Itachi in his trap. Said Uchiha was now caught by the shadow. Shadow body tier. Shouted Shikamaru, throwing his arms away from each other. It was a jutsu he had created, splitting the victim's shadow, therefore splitting his victim as well. However, one key thing that he even read in the information about Itachi Uchiha was, never look into his eyes. Shikamaru neglected to remember this information, forgetting as he reveled in his would-be victory, he looked directly into Itachi's eyes, wishing for the Akatsuki to remember the eyes of his killer into his death. But, Itachi capitalized on Shikamaru's little slip-up and captured him in Tsukyomi. Spelling. A second later, Shikamaru flopped onto his back, twitching with a look of pure agony on his face. Itachi turned around just in time to dodge a lunge kick from Kakashi. Noticing the lack of a kunai in his back and how it was no longer bleeding, Itachi made an assumption and voiced it. I see that Tsunade's plan went through. Itachi stated, staring at Kakashi. No, I've just been learning some medical jutsu on the side. Kakashi corrected, before readying a Rikiri. This was stopped when a flaming Tsuni flew into Kakashi, knocking them both into the trees. I see you didn't hold back on the flames. Noted Itachi, turning to look at an uninjured Naruto. They both have the 9 tails, it'll heal them just fine. Replied Naruto, before he held his hand out and blocked a kick from assigned Karuni. Karuni fell on the ground, looking up at Naruto with desperate eyes. We'll return you to home so that we can be a real family. She shouted defiantly, red chakra swirling around her. Naruto's eyes widened, stepping towards his sister as she got up. And you plan to use the 9 tails to do that? Don't you understand its destructive power by now? Don't you understand that it was the reason I left? Yelled Naruto, rushing forward and pulling his sword out of the seal on his left shoulder. Karuni, too mixed up in her own emotions to listen to Naruto's words, continued drawing power from the Kyuubi. Naruto reached Karuni just as a second tail formed and using his teachings of seals from Kodachi, slammed a dry seal that was on his hand onto Karuni's chest. Using a minuscule amount of heat, he melted the seal and using wind, he pushed all of the ink onto Karuni. The seal dried and activated, forcefully blocking the foul chakra. Karuni slumped back onto the ground from the loss of power. Naruto held his sword to her throat in an intimidating way. You are worse than Itachi's younger brother, always throwing yourself into situations you do not understand. For your own safety, Karuni, I suggest you back down and leave. Naruto demanded coldly, his sword slowly being enveloped in a white flame that inched its way to Karuni's throat, promising pain should it reach her. Forced into a corner, Karuni withdrew with minor injuries, but a large wound to her pride and confidence. However, Tsuni, being the fiery redeed she was, rushed the 2 cloaked figures and decided to fight, even though all of her teammates were out of the fight. She was already in the 4-tail state and anyone could easily see that she was no longer herself. Naruto lit his sword ablaze, pushing Itachi behind him as he readied his sword. My Naruto-kun, you are confident today. Mused Itachi, trusting whatever his friend was going to do. White flames surrounded the two and, knowing he was safe, Itachi just slowly turned in circles, admiring the beauty of the flames. When Tsuni was close enough, Naruto rushed her, the white flames following him. He smirked as the Kyubified Tsuni ran from the flames, the nine tails half inside of her taking control and running from the flames he knew well. The flames had the uncanny ability to purify Yakai, turning it into pure energy that was released onto the world. He should have known the moment his other half shied away from the fight instead of pushing his tenant. However, the nine tails vessel was not fast enough and eventually, she dropped to the ground as the chakra around her purified and slowly drained into a seal Naruto had on his wrist. Thanks for the reserve energy Nissan, and now, piss off. Growled Naruto, his flame eye pulsating with black and red flames to add to his intimidation effect. Are you sure you should be discouraging them, Chosen? Questioned Kadachi, worried for the mental state of his Chosen. I do feel bad about putting down their confidence, down their pride. It pains me to hurt them, even if I am holding back. But the meddle in things they need not and do not understand. Starting a relationship with them now would ruin things, and Konoha would push for information of the Akatsuki and their destruction, far too early for me to prepare for the other phoenixes. Sacrifices must be made, Kadachi, that was your first lesson, replied Naruto through their mental link, before staring up at the three Konoha shinobi that ran to retrieve Tsuni. Naruto could see the calculative eye of Shikamaru's, and he no doubt noticed how Naruto held back slightly more when fighting his sisters. He narrowed his eyes, flames lighting ablaze the battlefield around them. Do not meddle in my affairs any longer, sisters, for if you do, I will turn Konoha to ash. Growled Naruto, disappearing into the flames with Itachi. Elsewhere. A tan-skinned man grinned madly as he was placed in a tight cell that offered absolutely no mobility, his everything bound by sealed chains, restricting further his movement and chakra usage. He had hair down to his shoulder blades and was wearing a black prison jumpsuit that was further sealed. A prison reserved for SS rank missing nin had to be careful. But, the man grinned anyway. The prison would disappear off of his earth soon anyway. As the guards grunted at him, closing his cell, he merely laughed. Enjoy your last 5 minutes 37 seconds and 42 milliseconds. Hahaha. The man laughed and the guards just chuckled, amused at how he thought they would die. But true to his word, exactly 6 minutes later, the man was walking away with a glowing sword in hand, a prison burning and tearing apart behind him. Following him was an army of SSS rank missing nin that were now his loyal soldiers. His eyes were glowing purple, the same goes for his sword, but both stopped when he placed it onto his back. He turned around, staring at the victorious missing nin behind him. My soldiers. My brethren. My society. Today is the beginning of our triumph. Spearheaded by this prison's fall. For far too long has the world shinobi leached off of our brilliance. Stealing jutsu, forcing us to reveal our secrets. But that ends now. Missing nin are the shinobi of the future. Go my men. Pillage, kill, steal. We will make a shinobi village capable of creating an empire. We will rule the elemental nations by force. Preached the tan man, those surrounding him shouting in agreement before they ran off, jumped through the trees, flew through the air, disappeared into the ground, slipped into the shadows, and anything else they had created themselves. And what did the man do? He faded away into trillions of little atoms, flashing white as they were carried off by the wind. Minato's office. A small man calmly walked into the Yondame's office. Said Cage was surprised slightly by the unknown man, who suddenly activated every seal in the room, raising his alarm. Minato Namikaze, there was a certain incident that every Cage of every village, every daimyo of every country, every political power of the military side of the great elemental nations, needs to know. And the information begins with a prison hidden in the shadows. Where guards are stronger than Cage, the warden stronger than entire villages combined, where the inmates are even stronger. And one man took the prison down by force in less than a minute, started the man, opening a briefcase that would change the fate of the elemental nations for good. What if Naruto neglected by family Pheonix summoner? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you.